Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of Council to order. Our clerk today will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. I would ask, in light of the agenda, for a procedural motion to proceed in camera. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to the June 20th regular meeting of Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of Council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. Question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Members have been granted the authority to join meetings electronically. But tonight we have everyone here, and the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's a number of late items this evening. Agenda item 8A, update on City of Nanaimo 2022 special events, adding a PowerPoint presentation titled Special Events 2022 COVID Recovery. Adding consent item Lenhart Bridge, motion defeated, and moving it to separately addressed consent items. Councillor Armstrong requested that be removed to be addressed separately, as well as moving agenda item 10B1, Development of Transportation Memorandum of Understanding, to separately addressed consent items and adding the delegation from Kevin Shaw. As well, another additional consent item to be moved to be considered separately, Your Worship, item 10C1, as Councillor Bonner had previously declared a conflict, so we'll have to address that one separately as well and have him out of the room. Agenda item 12A, Design Commercial Concept and Implementation Plan, adding a delegation from Kevin Shaw. Agenda item 12M, Development Permit Application number DP1252 for 515, 529, 635 Terminal Avenue North. Add delegations from Susan Schultz, Dominic Lassonde, and David Croft. As well, Your Worship, you and I previously discussed making that the new item 12F, and then relettering the remainder of the agenda accordingly. So right now we have it as 12M, and it'll now be 12F, and then we'll reletter the rest of the agenda accordingly to allow for the delegations to not have to wait till the end of the agenda. And I think that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Councillor Hemmons?
Oh, no, pardon me.
Sorry. A motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Turley. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Martman. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Mayor's report. I don't have too much tonight. I would just remind everyone that the annual water quality testing began at outdoor swim spots on June 14th. And each year during the summer, the City of Nanaimo monitors water quality at popular swimming spots to make sure the water is clean for beachgoers and for wildlife. Testing occurs at the following locations, so don't be surprised to see it happening. Brennan Lake, Colliery Dam Park, Departure Bay, Long Lake, Swayalana Lagoon, or Maffeo Sutton Park, and Westwood Lake. In addition, we issued a news release, but it's worth repeating. The city investing to help residents reduce emissions and save money. On May 30th, Council allocated an additional $100,000 from the Climate Action Reserve Fund to support the city's continued participation in the province of British Columbia's Clean BC Better Homes rebate. This supports the continuation of a 2-year partnership between the city and the province to encourage home energy retrofits and reduce residential building emissions. Through the program, homeowners who apply for a home energy renovation rebate may be eligible for additional rebates provided by the City of Nanaimo. Nanaimo homeowners could receive up to $15,000 in rebates from the Provincial Clean BC Fund, as well as an additional $1,400 from the city. These additional amounts are also processed by Clean BC, and qualifying homeowners will receive these top-up amounts with their Clean BC rebates, and no additional applications are required. And it is election year, so I would remind everyone that the application process to apply to work in the local general election opened May 9th, but it does close on June the 29th. The city is seeking experienced election workers for the 2022 general local election to be held Saturday, October 15th, 2022, obviously. Anyone interested in working for the election can fill out an application form and submit it via email to elections@nanaimo.ca or drop it off in person at the Legislative Services Department in City Hall at 455 Wallace Street. And applications must be received by 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, June the 29th. And if necessary, please feel free to go to visit www.nanaimo.ca/go-to/elections. And the city thanks all applicants who've expressed their interest, but only those candidates selected for further consideration will be contacted. And I'd remind everyone that tomorrow, June the 21st, is the 26th anniversary since its inception of National Indigenous Peoples Day. This is a day that celebrates and recognizes First Nations, Métis, and Inuit cultures. It is observed on the 21st of June to recognize the summer solstice, the day of maximum daylight, and its importance to Indigenous peoples. Obviously, we've been unable to attend celebrations for the past 2 years, but they are happening again, although somewhat limited in comparison to the past. And in that sense, I want to thank the Mid-Island Métis Nation, who's hosting a variety of activities such as Indigenous games for children, a teepee to explore, and more at Maffeo Sutton Park starting at 5 p.m. Finally, there is this news story circulating that I should be wearing the Penticton V's jersey tonight because of the Clippers' rather sad loss, 4 straight games in a row to the Penticton V's. But when I attended and delivered the Nanaimo bar, courteously baked for me by Councillor Bonner to the Mayor of Penticton, after having donated $100 to his favorite charity, I had my photo taken with a lovely jersey, but unfortunately it was a really priceless jersey, so I didn't get to bring that one home. They are going to mail me one, so I just want the world to know I will be eating crow on behalf of the city of Nanaimo, but not tonight. And on a happy note for her and a sad note for the city, I'm going to ask Kelly Gerard to just stand. Oh, yes. All right. You see where Ms. Gurry is? Right next to her is Kelly Gerard. She has given 17 years of loyal service to the city, and she has announced that she is leaving us to go back to school and pursue a different career. I want to express on behalf of council our gratitude and our thanks. And as I said earlier in the closed meeting, I wasn't going to gild the lily too much, but I just wanted to say that she has been for me, every day I've had the pleasure of being mayor, a real bright spot. And I know she is for everyone else. So, Ms. Gerard, good luck. Thank you. The next matter is rise and report. We have nothing to rise and report on, Ms. Gurry. We do have presentations, and that's an update on the City of Nanaimo 2022 special events. And I want to welcome Darcy Osborne, the Assistant Manager, Cultural and Special Events, to give us the update. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. With respect and gratitude, we acknowledge that our work is carried out on the territory of the Snuneymuxw people. We are really excited and pleased to be here tonight to share with you information on the events that are occurring within the City of Nanaimo in 2022. We have lots of information to share around the challenges that our local organizations are facing as they work to bring back events to our beautiful city. Thank you. Reimagine Nanaimo recognizes city events, tournaments, and festivals and gatherings in its C4.8 section. Community events and gatherings are an essential part of how we celebrate who we are as a city and a people, celebrating our diversity and showcasing our local cultural resources, artistic talents, and community pride through events and gatherings to both residents and visitors. This builds a higher quality of life, a stronger economy, and a more connected Nanaimo. We have a great slide to show you. There it is. We look at our events in Nanaimo in many different categories. Typically, we have the events that happen in our picnic shelters events that happen throughout the city that are weddings, City of Nanaimo events, what are specifically built and designed by city staff and delivered by city staff, independent events, which are events that include local organizations or people within our community who wish to just host an event such as a walk or a run for a good cause or purpose. Community events, which are larger, broad-scale events, typically bringing in 5,000 to 10,000 people and run by local organizations and committees. And then private community events such as anniversaries, birthday celebrations, those kinds of things. What's interesting when you look at the slide is that in 2019, we had 233 events in our community parks, which was actually quite a thriving number. Of course, in 2020, when the pandemic hit, you'll see a drastic drop and down to only 77 events within our community. In 2021, we start to see an increase in our participation in the parks, but primarily in private functions and again, those picnic shelter happenings. We also saw that we brought several city parks and programs into our events outdoor because we weren't able to be indoors. In 2022, which we're only halfway through, you can see that we're already up to 197 events, and that's only 6 months into it. So we're going to probably surpass our 2019 figures in community events. So as you can see, events are on the rise, and they're all coming back, and we're very excited to have them. Our first sort of big-scale event to happen in the park at Maffeo Sutton is our Canada Day celebration, and Megan Lum, who is our special event coordinator, is here today to give you an update on what will be happening for Canada Day.
Thanks for having me. So we'll switch to the next slide if we can. Just click. There we go. Great. So first we'll talk a little bit about what happened in 2020. So when the pandemic hit in March, our Canada Day Organizing Committee would have been well underway in the preparations for the Canada Day celebrations, but needed to make a quick pivot when our restrictions came into place. So you might remember participating in some of our virtual events as we kind of tried to raise community pride and spirit. We had some Nanaimo Canada Strong videos, which I believe you were a part of, and the event became really encouraging folks to celebrate in their own backyards safely with some inspiration around crafts, meals that they could prepare as a family, and decor for Canada Day. When we moved into 2021, most folks had kind of adjusted to pandemic restrictions, and we were able to take some small celebrations outside. So we did celebrations at Neck Point, Kin Park, and Maffeo Sutton Park with some entertainment and food trucks, and our rec coordinators were out kind of spreading some Canadian cheer, while also promoting the Reimagine Nanaimo process, which was well underway. We're a little under 2 weeks out now from the Canada Day 2022 celebrations, and we're looking forward to finalizing up our details and having a great celebration at Maffeo Sutton Park. This celebration will look fairly similar to what we did in 2019, if you recall that event, albeit on a slightly reduced scale. So we'll be starting our day with a celebration of flags while we walk through the park with a land acknowledgement, opening prayer, and song by Elder Lolly Good, speeches from local dignitaries, and then we'll cut our Canada Day cake while we sing O Canada. We'll then have 2 stages of entertainment happening, our main stage musical entertainment at the Lions Pavilion and a community cultural stage across the lagoon on the grassy area. And throughout the park, you'll see interactive booths, entertainment, face painting, bouncy castles, and food trucks. So we're hopeful that folks will come out and join us for those events. At the Spirit Tent, we'll have our Leaders in Training and Quest program, our volunteers out in full force. It will be one of their first placements in what is their 40th anniversary year, so we're very excited to have their support on site. And overall, it will be a very similar look to 2019. New this year for Canada Day that I just wanted to mention really quickly is the bike valet and RDN transit shuttles, encouraging folks to use alternate and active transportation down to the park so that we have a little bit less of a parking crunch and folks can enjoy that free service from 9 till 5 on July 1st. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the community events are back, and as noted, we are going to be starting, we started a couple weeks ago with our Pride Festival, which occurred in Nanaimo. We have what we call the Big Six. These are them. So Pride Festival, the Dragon Boat Festival, Silly Boat Regatta, Marine Festival with the bathtub race, Blues Festival, and of course the Vancouver Island Exhibition. We've been meeting, city staff have been meeting with these organizing committees to help them navigate through what it's like to bring an event back a couple years later, and helping them to connect and reconnect with the stakeholders in our community. We've also are going to see the return of our multi-government community events, which would include National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th, and of course, starting this Thursday, the Commercial Street Night Market will be back in our community. We are also going to see in 2022 the return of some of our larger sporting events. These events, which are typically provincial or national, require bidding, and we often will work with Tourism Nanaimo to bring these bids back to our community. We have a couple coming up, and the first one will be in September 17th and 18th, which is Play On Canada, where we're one of 8 cities to host a large street multi-court hockey game. We will be seeing in 2024 the BC High School Track and Field Championship, which we've just been notified of that successful bid. And before the end of the week, the City of Nanaimo will be submitting a bid for the BC 55 Games to host in 2025 or 2026. So COVID recovery is definitely a challenging time for our community event organizers, and our motto is to try to turn those challenges into opportunities. So we've been working with them on what they can do to help reconnect. What are we hearing are those challenges? Mostly what we're hearing from them is that they want to start by modifying their events and not bringing back exactly what was happening in 2019. A lot's occurred in the last couple of years, and things are a bit more challenging. There's a lot of limits in terms of resources, and specifically in the areas of people, so that would include the board members, event organizers, volunteers for the day, and even booths and entertainers. There's limits to products, limits on support services, whether it's bylaw services, RCMP, or even food trucks, and of course funding the rising cost of materials. Additional costs, which are really important, are actually coming to the surface in the area of COVID comfort levels, and that's adding additional wash stations or physical distance barriers, things to make people feel comfortable to return. There has been some loss in board members, different committee formations. There's been some loss in history, and that includes the contacts or just even files of information. But we're working with those new committees to try to help them with the information that we have to help carry them back to where they were. I think the question that we're hearing a lot is organizers are questioning how to manage the slow return with limited resources while balancing what the community's expectation is. And of course, the question of the event, the question that we're hearing is, should the event stay the same, or is this a chance to turn how we deliver these events so that they're more meaningful to today's time, whether that's in a sustainable way or through waste management, et cetera. Is COVID hesitancy such a thing? Well, we did see there is some COVID hesitancy when we were having our family day in February. We saw young parents who have had COVID babies who have actually never participated in these larger scale events, so coming out for the first time and not knowing exactly what to expect. So how should the community respond, or will the community respond? This is a question. What should the community expect? We think that the community will respond. We saw that with Pride Festival, and we're seeing that with lots of our lower key events, is that people are coming out and they are ready to celebrate again, especially the fact that our events are primarily outdoors, and so that is an area of comfort for a lot of people. We're working with those organizations to encourage them to be really clear in their communication and make sure that the public is aware of what the changes and modifications are so that they know what they can expect. And lastly, our interaction with all of these organizations, we feel very, very confident that these committees are excited and committed to bring back community celebrations, to reconnect our community and showcase who we are as a city, and more than all, to build a higher quality of life for our residents and our visitors to Nanaimo. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Any questions from council? Councillor Martman.
Thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm looking forward to attending many of these events, especially the street market. I'm wondering on the slide where you said that there is 3 new events that were not in the previous years. I'm wondering if you can share what those are.
First 2 that come to mind right away is, well, one is Play On Canada in September, and there is a dance festival coming first week of July, and then in September there is a music festival as well. And they're all in, the music festival and the dance festival are both in Maffeo Sutton Park.
Thank you.
Very good. Seeing no further questions, thank you so much tonight. That's uplifting news for the community, and I hope everyone will take advantage after these many years of COVID to actually get out and enjoy the wonderful amenities and the entertainment people provide. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next are committee minutes, which are just for receipt. I'm going to ask for a motion for adoption of consent items A and B only. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. The next will be item 10C. Councillor Bonner, that's the consideration of the permissive tax exemption.
Yeah, Mr. Shaw, you're not up until after the remainder of the consent items are dealt
We're
with?
coming, Kevin. Don't worry. I still know how to run a meeting, but thank you.
And your worship, there was actually one missed in that motion. It was 10C number 2, so we'll have to get a motion for that one as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So on the consideration of the permissive tax exemption, all those in favor? And opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Welcome back. We're now on to 10C2, purchase of artwork. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. And we're now on to separately addressed consent items, and that's the development of a transportation memorandum of understanding. And we do have a delegation. Mr. Shaw, I think you know the drill. Come down, introduce yourself, give us your address, and you'll have 5 minutes, please. And I'll let you know at 4 minutes you have a minute left.
Sorry to jump the gun there. I just didn't want to be left out. I love being with you people. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kevin Shaw, President of the Victoria Crescent Association and a longtime property owner and resident of that area in downtown. As you forge this memorandum of understanding with the Regional District, BC Ministry of Transport, and BC Transit, we hope all of you and the parties involved take a better look at where better a transportation hub for downtown should be. As amongst your MOU, a downtown transit exchange will be a major component of it. We realize you, the city, bought the Gene Burns property in print and the black and blue buildings for $2 to $3 million almost a year ago for public realm and transit improvements. And the city spent $6 to $12 million to buy and improve the Wellcox, the Port Drive waterfront lands 10 years ago, with a transit hub in mind for there, not to mention the city money spent to move C-SPAN out to Duke Point. Was to be a hub for the fast ferry, which starts probably in the fall, where a new seaplane terminal would be built, near where Helijet flies in and out of, and where the cruise terminal all meet. Wow, a center. And your own public input survey for the 500 block of Terminal Avenue, the area conducted just last year, found Nanaimoites overwhelmingly said they don't want a transit exchange in that area. Almost 2,000 Nanaimoites went online and did your survey. And out of that, 45.07 points, dollars they had to spend, only 3.73 of that 54.07 wanted the 500 block of Terminal Avenue used. That is only 6% of the respondents wanted the exchange there. It was at the very rock bottom, actually, of the list overall. Almost 200 people also attended a city downtown street event and input, and the majority, they adamantly and boisterously disapproved to staff and to the city. And over 1,000 residents signed a petition against using that area as well. As you move forward with this MOU with the other parties, we, the almost 2,000 residents, taxpayers who filled out your survey, the over 1,000 who signed the petition against, and care so much about downtown in our city, we ask that you're not hell-bent on putting the transit exchange where Imprint, Black and Blue, and the city parking lot is now. Hope you look at other locations as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I understand the concerns raised by the city, but what are the concerns mostly raised by your association, Mr. Shaw?
Well, there's been lots of public disorder, lots of crime. Let's get right to it. There have been fires, there have been assaults, there's been lots of shoplifting, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And this city now, along with the province and the feds, are spending a lot of money. But instead of getting better, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I'll be talking later when I come up under the number 12, that even the RCMP's community safety, survey said that, 3/4 of residents are afraid to come downtown after dark. I think it was about 25% are even afraid to come down during the day. So until we get a handle on that, that's like putting a transit exchange, and I hope I'm not being too dramatic here, but a transit exchange on East Hastings in Vancouver near Maine. It's shocking, and I'm not trying to alarm anybody, but we all know what it's like downtown. And I know you people and me and our association, a lot of people are working very hard to try and fix things. And I would hope the province and the feds would just care as much, it seems, as we really do, you guys at this table and women, me and our association, and a lot of the residents who come downtown. We don't want the problems to get worse, and they're bad now.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know that this is just an MOU to look at enhancements and stuff, and that'll be part of the process, I'm sure. I know staff got all the comments back, so I'm sure that will be shared with the RDN and staff. So, but I appreciate you coming forward with your concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Shaw. So in regards to the survey, I think the plan has changed a bit with the transit, where it was being divided between Terminal Avenue and Victoria Crescent, where it wasn't all in one street.
No, it's always been the back of perhaps the Gene Burns building, but the public input that came in said they didn't want the Gene Burns property on Terminal used for that, so then it would come in around Lois Lane, Imprint, Black and Blue, go up through about the 16, 18 parking spots, the city parking lot.
So I understand that the Gene Burns site is not going to be used for transit. Mm-hmm. It will be on the highway, on the Black and Blue, in front of the Black and Blue.
It was going to be before, so.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Because downtown, and as you know, I'm here every day, mm-hmm. I don't see transit and crime. I see more people, if more people are using transit and more people are here in our downtown area and we build density, we create a safer environment. And I recognize that we have crime in downtown and throughout our city. But when you look at logically, as a downtown city, and you look at 15 years from now or 20 years from now, like you said, that connection that brings it all together and the improvements to Commercial Street, right? I'm just giving you my thoughts. So even with the changes that occurred, you still don't think it'll work?
No, we don't. Okay. We think there's going to be a major problem there because we have had on the laneway there, which is there now, we have had, even with the parking being used for the Queen's Hotel patrons, they go to the Blues Festival, et cetera, and that. We've still had major problems there. Vehicles broken into, people assaulted, fires, and you are going to have transit, yes, people coming and going more between 5, 6 a.m. and midnight, 11:30 or so. But you're also going to have, like you do at other transit exchanges, the Lower Mainland, Victoria, where people are hurt, injured, and assaulted that are just good people waiting on a bus. And I know we need to stop that. And how is the big $64 billion question that nobody seems to be dealing with that makes us all very mad and upset because we care about our downtown. Yeah. So I don't want to see people get injured who are waiting on a bus because that is the area right now of public disorder around the Salvation Army area where they're providing a service, and that needs to be done. But that is ground zero, the area you're talking about, a transit exchange. I don't think there's been as much of a problem where the interim transit exchange is now over by the CPR ferry. I don't think there's been the trouble there, much anyway, that you would have when now you're just compounding to a downtown area that's hard hit.
And I agree with you because I drive by where the buses are now, and very rarely do I see people that are living rough are usually not around that bus.
Yep.
Those buses. However, you could understand that for our city, that's prime waterfront.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah. So,
but I also understand that 10 years ago that was going to be the prime site, and the pallet farm was being talked about, which is at, what is that at, Esplanade and Front Street, and that's up from the waterfront, so you're getting far away. That is not prime waterfront. So that was another area that was talked about for a transit exchange, right there at the pallet farm.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Martman. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Krog. Thank you.
And I don't believe we have a mover, or do we need a mover in the circumstance because it's being considered? Just a vote, Ms. Curry.
You do need a mover because it wasn't moved and seconded originally.
Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion on this? All those in favor and opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the Lenhart Bridge. Councillor Armstrong?
Yes, I'd actually like. I would actually like to move the staff recommendation that council direct staff to increase the budget for the Lenhart Bridge project by $188,000. And if seconded, I will address it since I wasn't able to attend the finance and audit.
Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Brown? You have to put yourself on the list, otherwise just hang on. There we go.
Thank you. It's a failed committee motion. So I think I'm not opposed to redebating it, but I think it's a really slippery slope to carry over failed motions because I think Robert's rules would essentially break because it becomes nonsensical to have failed motions continually brought forward. Do you defer them? Can you reconsider it a failed motion? It just does not make sense and it goes against Robert's rules.
Thank you very much. I'll look to Ms. Gurry on this. Ms. Gurry?
Thank you, Worship. So that's a very good point that Councillor Brown raises, and normally we haven't put failed motions on under consent items. After thinking about that and having a good argument the other way last week about Councillor Armstrong was absent, but the main argument is the Finance and Audit Committee the final deciders, or is it council? And in that conversation, it is council that is the final decision makers. However, Councillor Brown's point about Robert's Rules of Order and how we haven't historically put failed motions under consent because they failed at the committee level. So I believe now considering this other argument, I guess I'm easily swayed, it could be considered out of order to have it under consent and to have it rather have been reconsidered or brought forward for reconsideration. in another manner appropriately by Councillor Armstrong. Having said that, and since it is here tonight, and since Councillor Armstrong was absent, as the mayor, you would have the ability to bring that forward. You're the only one that has the ability to bring that forward. So to clean that up, and until I get some clarity around how we do the consent items when it comes to failed motions, if you, your worship, could put this back on the table to be considered and have that discussion, that would procedurally make it correct for tonight. If
Councillor Brown?
Thank you. I think it's important to highlight there's nothing to bring back. I think the mayor's powers would be to introduce it under new business. I'm not trying to be overly pedantic here, but I think if we allowed such things, it could be grossly abused. I think this is a very innocent case, but I think there's mechanisms in the procedure bylaw for every councillor and mechanisms for the mayor to bring it forward under new business for consideration that just avoids any messiness associated with the procedure bylaw. Thanks.
So, Ms. Gurry, I can bring this under other business, is what you're saying tonight.
that is correct, and there was no seconder to Councillor Armstrong's motion, was there?
Going to complete that part of it was Councillor Martman.
So if we can withdraw that and deal with it under other business, that would.
Councillor Armstrong, just wait. Thank you.
Yeah, just for clarification, I did ask this to be removed last week, and if I would have been told that it could not have been, I would have asked for it to be brought, because my understanding has always been that the council table is where the motion fails or passes, not the committees. So I would really appreciate clarification on that, and even if we could put it in a procedure bylaw, because if I would have known this, I would have asked for reconsideration based on the fact I wasn't able to attend due to illness.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Armstrong. You did
And I
ask
agree
last
to
week.
remove. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we will definitely get clarification on that. And thank you, Councillor Brown and Councillor Armstrong, for understanding this.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think we've debated that one, and we can debate it later again. The next item are delegations unrelated to agenda items, and the first is Joanne Morneau, Janine Hu, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Annette Noble, re-plastic bag ban. And I think you're all coming in via Zoom, unless I'm mistaken. Sorry, pardon me, didn't see you there. Please come up to the mic.
Can you hear me? It's Joanne Morneau from Fabric Bag Solution. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very
Oh, good.
much.
Okay.
If
So good evening, Mayor and councillors.
Can you just wait 1 second? I'll just, you'll have 5 minutes. I'll let you know when you have a minute left. If you could just introduce yourself and give us your address, that would be grand. Thank you.
It's Joanne Morneau. I'm calling in from Burnaby. I'm with a volunteer group, and I have some students, both locally and from over here, that wanted to, actually on a very happy note, thank you for the, I guess it's close to 1 year anniversary of your single-use plastics ban. And we're thrilled that you have stepped forward and put that in place. And I have some students that, like I said, wanted to say a couple of words. We brought some gifts for you. We made some recycled bags from textiles, because what we're all about is reducing textiles, because there's a huge problem, especially overseas in foreign countries, with our clothes that we send over. And then, of course, plastics. So before I pass the baton, and I know we're in a real time crunch, I just wanted to say one thing, and it's really about the theme that I think all the students and I are really believing on. You know, the global climate crisis that we're facing, it's really driven by greed. And, you know, wanting bigger, wanting better, wanting more, putting profits over the planet. And the solution is obvious. It's generosity. Generosity is the opposite of greed. So being generous, giving and sharing without expecting anything in return, it's an essential attribute to have today in our society and moving forward. And we believe that being generous, thinking of others, is vital to solving the climate crisis. So I'm going to pass the word over to, I think, Janine and Alicia are first. So take it over, girls, and then over to Emma.
Okay, thank you so much, Joanne. So hello, my name's Janine Hugh, and I'm a grade 11 student in the IB program at Port Moody Secondary School.
And my name name is Alicia and I'm in grade 4 at Frank J. Nate Elementary School. As you know, polyethylene is the world's most commonly used plastic, producing over 100 million tons annually. This toxic substance is in detergent bottles, single-use and reusable plastics, clear food wrap, and in our opinion, one of the most harmful products afloat in the market, plastic bags. Now, of course, plastic bags can make life more convenient. You know, all those groceries won't carry themselves.
However, reusable bags are not only more environmentally friendly, but they also only need to be purchased once and withstand the test of time. And in April 2021, we expressed our concerns to Honorable George Heyman about how municipal governments did not have the authority to pass bans on single-use plastics or foam. Just 3 months later, the province amended a regulation under the community charter to allow local governments to ban single-use plastics, including plastic checkout bags, polystyrene foam containers, and plastic utensils.
And recently, Nanaimo has made some amazing progress toward a greener community, and we are thrilled. Banning single-use items including plastic shopping bags and encouraging the reuse of clean reusable bags. We are here today on behalf of the Super Team because we want to thank you for being as equally passionate about conserving our habitat as we are.
Today, thanks to you, we are sailing towards our goal of banning single-use plastics across Canada. Now, not only have you steered us one step closer to the final destination, but you have also set a precedent for many others in our community. 2 years ago, this sounded like a dream. It was literally unreal. But with a plan, passion, and determination, we've learned that we could turn our dreams into reality. On behalf of the whole
RAC Super Team,
we want to thank
the city of Nanaimo.
Thank you.
And now over to Emma, who is there in person. We have one person, and in the audience is one of our volunteers from the sewing group, Deb, and she has some of our fabric bags that she will be leaving for you at the end of our presentation. So Emma.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Emma Sadler-Reed. I am 17 and I am the co-chair for the NDSS Environment Committee. We are a group of like-minded kids who are determined to have an impact on our community and the future of our generation. Recently, we even won the Energy Cup due to our efforts. We have been partnering with the Nature Trust and the community, putting our minds and ideas to work. With them, we've worked in the local area and are restoring several sites. However, it's not enough to only do the small things. We need your support and action to make a real difference in the community and in the world. I want to have a future where I can go out and enjoy the nature around me. I don't want to be concerned about where we will be when I'm older. I implore the City Council members and staff to do everything they can to ensure that Nanaimo and the surrounding community is sustainable and resilient in the face of the current climate crisis and other social problems. I know when I go to university this year, I will be part of the change I want to see and become the role model for future generations. But will you? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very impressed. You finished 6 minutes under the limit, 6 seconds rather.
Oh, did we good? Oh, one last thing. Are you adding single-use plastic produce bags to the ban? That's our request from the sewing ladies. We don't like those bags. Please add them. And that, besides that, thank you so much.
And now you're 8 seconds past. But I admire tenacity. They say a good salesman never keeps their foot in the door, they keep their head in the door. That way they can keep talking. Well done, and thank you very much, and appreciate the presentation. On behalf of council, I think I can thank all of you. I see we've got Councillors Gesselbrock and Hemmens want to say something, though. Yes?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say thank you for coming to take the time to speak to council. I don't know if you saw the paper today, but the federal government announced that they're going to be putting in a ban for a whole variety of single-use items. And sometimes that takes a long time to get put into place. And it was nice that the city kind of got a little bit ahead of things and got the plastic bags banned, and seeing that across all the community changed over. And I don't think we missed them too much, but there is a lot of other materials. And so thanks for taking the time and keep showing up to places like this and telling people to get off the rears and start changing more products out there, because there's a mountain out there that needs to be done, and gives me a lot of hope to see a whole nother generation stepping up and making change. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to the delegations. I just want to say, Emma, I'd like to see you at this mic again. I think that keep coming back to council, and Alicia, and I'm sorry I can't see the other young girl's name, but
Janine.
It's so important that you come and talk to leaders about things that are important to you, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm thinking if you want to present the bags.
Okay, Deb, over to you. And
Just-
also, if anyone wants to share a
I would
picture
suggest
afterwards,
you might want to
please
have,
do.
we have some senior staff here who will receive with gratitude. And we can ensure they're distributed. Very good. Thank you so much, all of you. Appreciate the presentation tonight. Cheers.
Thank you from Burnaby. Take care.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
The next delegation is Deborah Hollins and Jason Harrison on behalf of the Nanaimo Community Advisory Board. Good evening, and I think you know the drill. 5 minutes. I'll try and remember to let you know when you've got a minute left if you're running long, so appreciate it and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jason Harrison. I'm Executive Director of the Canadian Mental Health Association Mid-Island Branch and one of the co-chairs of the Nanaimo Community Advisory Board.
And I'm Deborah Hollins, Executive Director of Nanaimo Family Life Association, and I'll also sit on the Community Advisory Board.
We're here this evening to inform you of the NCAB and invite the City of Nanaimo to provide an elected official and alternate to sit as either a voting or ex officio member of the NCAB at your discretion. And I just thought ahead of the presentation that'll be shown after presenting to the RDN, I know many of you were there. Just to clarify up front, that this is a local organizing committee responsible for setting direction and addressing homelessness in the community and the region, and that is a requirement of the federal Reaching Home funding. We do have an engagement strategy on how to achieve broad and inclusive representation, coordinate partnerships in the community with organizations and individuals. We do assess and recommend projects for funding, support the community entity, which is the United Way, in the planning and implementation of coordinated access, and approve the official homelessness report that is submitted to the federal government. I think you can click forward to the first video. In the slides, the next one would be around the funding. That says $2 million invested. Actually, the video works too. think you all have access to the amount of money that is invested by the federal government and there, so we'll use our last minute, turn it over to Deborah.
All right.
And you're exactly at 1.01.
Thank you. So why the NCAB needs you and your representation. We want to ensure a robust and inclusive Community Advisory Board representation. We want to support to develop and approve a community plan to guide RH investments, support to pivot and adjust to rapidly changing situations such as COVID, wildfires, tent cities, etc., coordinating efforts in support of reducing and eliminating homelessness, and uniting the parallel work of NCAB with the work of the SPO. Specifically with that, CAB is experienced in this area. CAB has the networks in place, and our objectives completely align with the SPO.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the delegation? I'm seeing none. Thank you. Pitch made and heard.
Thank you.
The next item are reports, and the first is Design Commercial Concept and Implementation Plan. Mr. Corson. Good evening, and please.
Great. Good evening, Your Worship. Thanks for indulging me there. Yeah, so I'm here tonight to provide Council with an update on a number of the key projects in the downtown, but with a focus on Commercial Street. Council, remember we started the Commercial Street project in the fall of last year with the Tool Design Group, and Ian Lockwood from Tool is online if Council has any specific questions about the project. But I do want to just pop back to July of 2019, where we had a GPC meeting, a Governance and Priority Committee meeting with Council to talk about downtown. And that time, Council gave us some direction to work on public realm projects for the downtown, which certainly Commercial Street is one of those, to address mobility issues, to look at how we can redevelop key sites in the downtown, and deal with some of the social issues we're faced with. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes providing a bit of an update on that. So in terms of key site development, there's a lot going on in downtown Nanaimo right now. Certainly the 100 Gordon Hotel, which Council spent years working on, is coming out of the ground nicely. Council acquired the Gene Burns property to help stimulate redevelopment of that key site in the heart of downtown. And through that, we've seen the owners of A&B Sound Building bring through a proposal for Commercial Street, One Commercial to redevelop. We're seeing a lot of development on the Wallace Street corridor with the TELUS Living Building, the building of the former Caledonia Clinic, and the Howard Johnson site are all coming forward, as well as a proposal for 77 Chapel Street. In total, that's over 1,200 units of development that could be built out in the next 2 to 5 years, which is really significant for downtown, which will really aid in the revitalization and kind of the hustle and bustle downtown. In terms of mobility, Council made a big investment in updating the Front Street bike lanes, in looking at upgrading Albert Street, which will happen in the next year or two. And certainly we've had some discussion about the need for a downtown hub for transit. So those investments are underway. We've talked about downtown safety and security and the community safety officers, and the use of the systems planning organization to help provide a coordinated approach to our response to some of the challenges. In terms of public realm, as part of the Terminal Avenue project, we're going to see improvements to the Italian fountain, shown in these images, and upgrades to Pioneer Park as well as part of the terminal project, which is ongoing this fall and into next year. So in terms of Commercial Street, the main reason we're here tonight, a large investment and an opportunity to kind of reimagine how we use Commercial Street. Very much a project that was based on a lot of the feedback we were getting from Reimagine Nanaimo and from our stakeholders in the downtown core. So we, early in the process, a vision was developed, which was to turn commercial into a green, connected, an equitable place that reflects the history of Nanaimo while attracting people, investment, and vitality. And through that, we had 9 design principles that were included: creating a connected place, making Commercial Street a convenient place that's inviting for people to come downtown and spend time on the commercial corridor, a place that's comfortable, a place that's legible. It's really clear how to use space using color and different textures. Need for the Commercial Street to be engaging, for it to be safe, to be accessible. In terms of equity, making sure it's a place for visitors of all ages, abilities and backgrounds, and economic means. And space that's flexible, so space that can be repurposed. It could be used for things like the night market, events, the plazas, and sidewalks. So all those we cross-referenced with this new city plan, and you can see there's really good alignment between the design principles with Reimagine Nanaimo and the city plan. In terms of process, we had 2 large events. The first was in November. We had something called the Discovery Charrette, and that's where we asked people to provide their inputs on what they liked about Commercial Street, what they didn't like, really going in with no set agenda or ideas for the street, but just hearing what people thought Commercial Street could be. Talked to lots of different stakeholders, the different business improvement associations. We talked to the project teams looking after the Trans Exchange project, Diana Krall Plaza, the A&B Sound Building, VIU students, and the wider community. Then we rolled into February, where we had a charrette process, and through that charrette process, we started developing different designs. I know council was involved in both of those. These are just images from the public sessions that were held. This was the staff walkthrough where we were looking at different areas and getting ideas on how we could respond. Lots of ideas from the public, which was great, and the design team did a great job of incorporating those into the final plans. And many of those 9 design principles we talked about were captured in the feedback we got from the public. So overall, it's kind of 4 main themes that the plans are built around. So one is enhancing the streetscapes. So we're looking at the introduction of a flush curb, so removing curbs but still using texture and other ideas to provide visual cues and texture for folks with mobility issues to understand where they are on the street, using public art, making sure there's lots of opportunities for businesses to spill onto the street, making it lively, opportunities to look at how we can improve temporary uses of the street, like the night market, music festivals, etc., and making downtown a place that's green and has lots of public art. Oh, sorry, slide's stuck. There we go. Oh, this is a big image. Yeah. So at the end of the day, this was a plan that we worked through with the community to develop, and this is the whole cross section of the Commercial Street corridor, starting at Albert and Wallace and going all the way up to Dallas Square at the Cenotaph. And I'll just take you through some cross sections of this, and then we have a little video I could play just to highlight the project. So this is the Diana Krall Plaza concept, very much just an iterative idea, but the idea is that the plaza spills into the road. The road actually becomes part of the public space. We remove some of the barriers around Diana Krall Plaza itself, so it becomes a focal point for the community. Very much aligns with the work that was done as part of the Diana Krall Plaza work under Dr. Woody. At Bastion and Commercial, we're looking at redoing the rainbow crosswalk there with an updated version, and this is a project that could be done in one of the first phases of the project, all the way up to the Great National Land Building. And then on Dallas Square itself, I had an opportunity to work with the Legion to see how we can redevelop this area, and it's something we'll continue to work with them on. These were some initial ideas that came through, but certainly the final design will be done with their full input. In terms of phasing, so you can see by this map, the first phase is down at Wallace and Albert to Commercial Street, and the Commercial Bastion intersection. Phase 2 is Diana Krall Plaza up to the National Land Building. Phase 3 is finishing off the rest of Commercial Street. And then latter phases are the Dallas Square and the side streets. In terms of funding, Council's committed funding to phase 1. So it's, and then the further phases will be added into the budget for Council's consideration and could be funded through grants or other projects as well. So I think we'll just play, we have a short video for you, which is much easier to see visually as a fly-through, and it's narrated, but not by me, so we'll put that on for you right now.
Nanaimo is changing. As one of the top 5 fastest growing communities in Canada, the city is attracting more young people than ever as new residents seek a healthy lifestyle in a beautiful, natural setting. Building for the future and celebrating our past, City Council is investing in physical changes that will revitalize Nanaimo's historic downtown. But the historic public spaces we love need some love too. That's why the city is updating and upgrading sidewalks, creating safer pedestrian and traffic flows, and transforming underused spaces into vibrant public places. Big changes are happening in Victoria Crescent. We know that the intersection of Wallace and Commercial Streets can feel confusing and unsafe, and we've explored ways to make this easier to use for all modes of travel. The changes to the flow of traffic, together with the hub redevelopment of the former Gene Burns building and the one commercial redevelopment of the former A&B Sound building, will make this a vibrant gateway to Commercial Street. Upgrades to Terminal Avenue and the Transit Hub, including the integration of the rapid bus network into the existing transit infrastructure, will make it easier for various modes of transportation to tie our city to important destinations. One of the best-loved parts of the city, and recognized by the Canadian Institute of Planners in 2011 as one of the greatest streets in Canada, Commercial Street is home to historic sites, lively retail, and Nanaimo's Arts District. A few key elements of the revitalized street design include flexible use of the parking lane for patios, bike parking, trees, plants, and benches, clear space to walk, and guidance to ensure that people who have special mobility requirements and needs, like wheelchairs or guide dogs, can comfortably enjoy the space. The whole street is at the same level, so people can move freely during events, like the night market. In the center of the Downtown Arts District, Diana Krall Plaza is a tribute to the award-winning singer and pianist born in Nanaimo. The new design rejoins the plaza to Commercial Street, bringing the spaces together to create a large, connected area that will be more suitable for hosting events and public gatherings. Elements of the plaza include the closure of the Wharf Street access off Commercial Street for vehicles, public play elements at the library, and places for sitting and people watching. An interactive stage and viewing area will be the main tribute to Diana Krall. This design aligns with work completed in 2021 by the re-envisioned Diana Krall Plaza Committee. Upgrades to Skinner Street will better support the adjacent businesses. The intersection of Bastion and Commercial Streets proudly celebrates the entire range of human expressions of love and identity right at the center of our town. Dedicated to the late John Anthony Lee, the intersection is an important tribute to the work that has been done and continues to be done to recognize the diverse community members that live in Nanaimo. The intersection maintains the existing four-way stop control and is raised to provide level crossings for pedestrians and further slow traffic on Bastion Street. The space in front of the iconic Great National Land Building will have new places for people to gather and take in the architecture, reconnect with friends on a patio, and celebrate the historic buildings that are still in use today. passing the Great National Land Building, the street will continue to provide flexibility in seating, planting, parking, and market space before it comes to Dallas Square Park. With a realigned street, the park space is larger, allowing for a variety of seating, playing, and reflecting spaces. The design will accommodate more room for gatherings, such as Remembrance Day, and respects the sacrifice made by members of our military. Further consultation will take place before any changes are made. From the cenotaph, the view is directed across a water feature to the harbor. A new access to the waterfront across Front Street removes the visual barriers to the water and the waterfront walkway and provides additional seating opportunities. Learn more about plans for Nanaimo's future at this address.
Great, thanks for your indulgence, Your Worship. So certainly if people are interested in watching that video, that'll be up on our website tomorrow, and all the information on the project is there. So tonight, Your Worship, we're looking for Council to endorse the plan and to direct staff to include the further phases of the project in subsequent budget discussions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corson. We do have a delegation, but I have 3 councillors. Do they wish to ask the questions now of you before we get to the delegation? You'll wait? Or now? Now, please, Councillor Armstrong.
So my question is in regards to, we had a report from Mr. Nielsen and Mr. Rich about the all the safety issues and the crime downtown. And this plan is, in parts of it, is in direct contrast to their report. How are we going to blend the two with the CEPTED principles? Because they were quite concerned about some of the designs leading to increased crime.
Thanks, Your Worship, through to Councillor Armstrong. So the consultant team worked with Mr. Rich and Mr. Nielsen on this. So the 2 projects were coordinated. Is there some aspects where you're seeing there's conflict?
Yes, that's what Mr. Rich told us when I asked him the question, with a lot of the trees and placement of benches, et cetera.
Oh, I'm unsure of that. I'm sorry, because he did contribute to the plans.
Yeah, and then my second question is we've got the initial costs for each of these phases, but have we included the maintenance cost? For example, like to repaint all the crosswalks, which is what, 50, 60,000 every couple of years. Are more staff going to be required for all the new plantings, et cetera?
Yeah, through Your Worship, Councillor Armstrong. So no, it's a very good point. So the operational costs are not included. These are just capital costs.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
I can wait till after.
All right, thank you. Then we're going to hear from Mr. Shaw again. Just for the record, name and address, Mr. Shaw.
Kevin Shaw, Victoria Crescent Association, living there as well. I'd like to thank Mr. Corson for his presentation and the work you all are doing on trying to make downtown a better place. So, since, as you state, the commercial street design concept and implementation integrates with transit improvements in the 500 block of Terminal Avenue, I do stand before you again. We hope the commercial street development plan is not bent on integrating that bus exchange in the 500 block of Terminal, although we just saw that in the video presentation. If so, I ask that it not be dependent on such, and we do too with the association. We all want downtown revitalized, those of us who own property, live, and the businesses more so. But we do not want a transit exchange that will be a draw for public disorder, crime. We have enough downtown in our area already, as you know, assaults, robberies, fires. The porta potties that were placed in the very area you were looking at were set on fire, new ones put back, and then they were burnt to the ground. Around them, chop shops for stolen bicycles. They sprang up encampments and violence. Parks literally across the street, the Italian Fountain, the Firehouse Grill, have been fenced off. We thank you for the community safety officers coming on board soon, but police, bylaw, and security have not been able to bring the public disorder under control at this point. It's been growing. And the province and the feds are decriminalizing some drug use. Our area is already overwhelmed by usage and its effects, And the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions says no one will be mandatorily placed in detox or rehab. A community policing safety audit just last year found residents in the downtown and surrounding areas feel that crime is increasing. 59% said they were dissatisfied with their overall level of safety, and 72% said they do not feel safe walking in the downtown after dark. The bus exchange, like in Langford, Kelowna, Surrey, are unfortunately sites, crime and disorder centers. Metro Vancouver has its own transit police because of crime in that system. Downtown Kelowna's Queensway Exchange, which Nanaimo is basing its exchange on, has had many assaults and a stabbing and murder right by it, right at it. Winnipeg's downtown, the Portage Avenue Exchange, had to be torn out because Winnipeg's police chief called it a hot spot for crime. He said not a week went by without an assault, a robbery, some kind of criminal activity. The shelters and benches, unfortunately, can attract disorder. At the moment, we cannot even keep them available for transit riders much of the time here near the Tim Hortons on Wallace Street, near the Ramada on Terminal Avenue, nor around University Village. Never mind congregating an exchange with shelters and benches and washrooms in the high crime area of Victoria Crescent. I will be told we cannot stop progress or things have to go on. But since we do not have a handle on the problems in our midst now, and since problems have dramatically increased, businesses closing, moving, gating being put in, awnings removed, we should not be setting us up, residents, businesses, property owners, and shoppers, for more problems. You say you listen? Let's see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegation, Mr. Shaw. If downtown weren't experiencing the challenges that it was, would you be as opposed to the bus exchange?
No,
in that location?
not as opposed, no. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the delegation? Not seeing any. Mr. Shaw, as always, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Passion
and
for
all
the
of you for
downtown.
all your time and the work you do. Thank you, staff, too. Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, Mr. Corson, and this may be not part of the discussion, but I want to get it off my chest anyway. So I've been receiving a lot of concerned questions from citizens regarding the four-way stop at Bastion and Commercial. And I look at the diagram and the extra color and everything is added, and while it's very appropriate, it's also going to add to the confusion of who goes first and who goes second. And I'm wondering if there's any consideration being given to changing that to a two-way stop as opposed to the current four-way. Perhaps everybody understands it, but people like me, like some of my friends who are a little older in life, are finding it very confusing. Thank you.
Through your worship, Councillor Turley, I appreciate you raising that concern. I know Mr. Rose and his team provided a lot of input into the design, and I think their professional opinion is that a four-way stop works for everyone. It gives pedestrians the priority, but certainly it is a bit of a change for people going down there when they're used to the traffic light and the flow through of traffic. But I think in staff's opinion, the four-way stop is probably the safest in the long run, but a bit of an adjustment period for people.
I can't resist commenting at this point, Councillor Turley. I really love the four-way stop because there's never that much traffic, and it's faster for me to get through that intersection now than it is to wait for the light to change. No, I'm in a car, trust me. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question through you to staff, a very specific question from a resident. On page 40 of attachment 2 of our materials regarding the Wharf Street closure, it references that there's not going to be vehicle access south of the parkade entrance. I can't place a parkade entrance on that street, nor can the resident. There's a parkade for the arts building, but there's no actual parkade. So where are we blocking off vehicular traffic on Wharf?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hemmons. So, yeah, the parking lot for the art gallery is a surface parking lot. The parkade access for the Coast Bastion is off of Front Street. I don't believe the Coastal Community Credit Union has a different access there, so I don't believe we're blocking any access. Now, some people might have come down Wharf Street come down Wharf to park that they're coming off of Commercial, so that would be closed. So, a bit of a change of routing for people. But by closing Wharf Street, the goal there was to actually increase the plaza size to give people more. More enjoyment of this public plaza as opposed to it being a road. So that was the idea.
Right, thank you, and I fully support the closure of Wharf. I think that's a great idea. So the parkade that's being referenced in these materials refers to the Arts Building parkade, or the Coast Bastion parkade. Okay, thank you. I have to go do a closer view, obviously.
If I can, this is Tyler Dolly with Design. Sorry, hopefully you can hear me. We're calling it a parkade, but it's really a parking. It's a small parking area, more like a garage for a small building just across from the library building. It probably only has parking for a few cars, 2 or 3 probably. So it's not a public access parking lot.
In order, Councillors Bonner, Martman, Armstrong, and Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Very much in favor of this plan. If I could speak to Bastion and Commercial a bit, having drive by there on my bike all the time, I probably 3, maybe 4 times we've been sitting there having a conversation with someone who wants to cross the street, but I say, well, it's a 4-way stop, you can go, but they say, well, there's the lights flashing. And that's the confusion, is we got to get rid of the traffic lights, because that's what's causing the confusion, not the fact there's a 4-way stop. So I look forward to that work being done, so I don't have to explain to people that they can cross the street now. I did have a little question regarding the piano in Diana Krall Square. I remember the conversation we had when we first talked about this, and the idea was to make that a working piano, which would make it the largest one in the world. Is that not in the go anymore? Or?
So through Your Worship, Councillor Bonner, yes, certainly at the Charrette, I think we were coming up with really exciting ideas and trying to get energized, and that was certainly an idea. I think it's certainly something that could be possible, but I think we'd have to explore this. So what we're presenting really is our concept plans, and if as we move forward with this project, if Council wishes to, we'll be doing detailed design work and actually seeing if we could find the parts for something like that. Certainly there's some concerns about the maintenance of that, and I know there's been a few comments about the sound of it. If people aren't great piano players, it could be a bit distracting for people. So I think it's something, as we get into detailed design, we can have a second look at that and see if it's possible, and if not, maybe find another way to kind of honor Diana Krall and the idea of music in the plaza.
Okay. I know that the work we're doing here, we're basically designing for the future. I mean, this is at least a 10-year project, it looks like. I'm listening to Mr. Shaw and his concerns, and I'm just quite confident that in this 10 years we're going to be able to deal with this issue that we have in our downtown. So it will look not unlike what we just saw tonight. So that's what I'm hoping for. So, and that's what we're planning for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. And I concur with Councillor Bonner. One of my questions was going to be about the keys on the piano, and I think that would be extraordinary and very exciting to do. In response to Councillor Turley, the 4-stop, I agree, we need to take out that light. I think that's confusing, but I go through that stop quite a few times a day, and it's nothing like Bruce and Fifth. So this whole Harewood area, we have 4-way stops all over the place. So I like it. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I think I made my concern earlier, but it still stands. It's great to have all these capital costs, but without an operating budget, I find it very difficult to vote for something because operating costs will have a direct impact on taxation, and we've seen taxation go up a lot this year. Like, I would like to know how many more staff are going to be needed to be hired to maintain all this, because obviously our existing staff can't. So are we looking at an increase of a 1% tax to maintain this? I hear from a lot of people, and again, it comes from the north end more so in central Nanaimo, about all the investment in the downtown core and little in the other areas of the city. So I guess my question is there a way that we can have an operating cost so that we know exactly what we're voting for and the impact it will have on taxation?
Through your worship, Councillor Armstrong, I don't think I can get a number for you this evening. I'd have to sit down with the various departments. I know that Council, you've committed a lot of money to the clean team and to extra cleaning in the downtown. So I don't think those costs would change much, because you're spending a lot of money in terms of keeping downtown. Those would stay the same. I think your additional costs are going to be on the plantings. And you already have quite significant plantings downtown, and some of those are going to be changed, moved around. The trees, the idea would be they'd be irrigated by an automatic system, so there wouldn't be people need to maintain the irrigation system, but not on a daily basis. So yeah, I think it'd be a bit of a puzzle for us to figure out, to be honest with you. I don't think I can get an answer for you right now on that.
Thank you. And then my last concern too is the placement of a lot of the trees, because a lot of the ones I see on these plans used to exist and then were removed because of SEPTED principles, yet we're going back to put them back in. And unlike Councillor Bonner, I'm not very optimistic on the issues revitalizing themselves very fast until we get the provincial government to move on secured facilities for those that need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Corson and Mr. Lockwood, if he's on the call. There's certainly a lot in this that I like very much. It's a very exciting plan, but like many of these plans, it's very easy to look at pretty pictures and say, oh, that's going to be great and everything's going to work beautifully. And without knowing, as Councillor Armstrong mentions, the maintenance costs and so on. I do have some concerns over the design elements. And I think we have to be very realistic when we look at where we place certain elements and how appropriate they would be. The four-way stop, my understanding, maybe my memory is faulty, but my understanding was that when it was moved to a four-way stop, that was going to be on a trial basis. And we were going to get a report at some future date, which we have not had to this point. I think in terms of automobiles, four-way stops are fine. I find that particular one, my experience downtown as a pedestrian has been that other pedestrians find it very confusing and in fact dangerous at that four-way stop. They're never sure whether they should walk or not. So I throw that out there. With all of these extra people flocking to our downtown for this exciting new commercial street development, I am going to get in a plug that we need more parking. And I'm going to suggest right now that an expansion to the Bastion Street Parkade would be very much in order so that people can park and then enjoy walking up and down Commercial Street. And my final point, Your Worship, if I may, and for me this is the most important one, I have a very serious concern about the Dallas Square proposal. I note in the report that there is pending consultation with Royal Canadian Legion, but I am really not in favor of a relocation of the cenotaph unless there is some very good reason for it. And what I see in the diagram in front of me is a rather large water feature immediately in front of the cenotaph, right where the Remembrance Day ceremony gathering would be held. So I think there must be a better way of redesigning that particular area of the end of the street. And I certainly won't be supportive of this unless I hear that the local legions have been not only consulted, but in fact give their approval to what is proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Corson again. So the only other question I have, and I'm only asking because I didn't see it in the report, is with regard to commercial parking on Commercial Street. Are there still going to remain to be at least 2 available spots during specific times of the day, or?
Yeah, so through Your Worship to Councillor Turley, maybe Tyler Gully, who's on the phone, might want to respond to this, but the idea is that using the flex zone that's being created, it actually creates more opportunities for the commercial parking. So I'll maybe let Tyler respond, since he's implemented this in a number of different cities across North America.
Yeah, it's a great question. Your downtown is a little different than others in that deliveries have to happen on the street. There isn't a network of alleyways that deliveries would occur on. And so this type of design with the flush street allows for easier access to the frontage of buildings and the front doors for loading and unloading. I think it's really a question probably with Mr. Rose and the traffic team to understand how to sign the spots for commercial loading and deliveries. I know that there had been some previous legislation from the provincial government that may have impacted how one signs that in British Columbia. And so that's, I know, something that Mr. Rose was looking at to support the businesses, because deliveries are will come from Commercial Street for most of the businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to move the staff recommendations.
And do we have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Bonner, do you wish to speak to it?
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, our community's growing and our downtown's been underperforming for quite some time. That's why we brought in some world-renowned urban designers to help us improve the space, so better attract more business and people. I really appreciated when they're presenting to council. They've done some extensive work in the United States of some towns, downtown areas that were a lot more rundown than Nanaimo and struggling, and with improvements that allowed people to access the space easier, be able to walk around, be able to see the shops easier, and improve the space so that you can spend time there. It was amazing to see the transformations that it made in these places. So I have no doubt that if we implement the changes that are suggested in the concept plan, that we'll see some dramatic improvement. And I think that you know, we really need this to happen. We deserve a downtown that works and can really be a major economic driver for us moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
I'm just, again, as to what Councillor Thorpe said, I heard the same thing from the Legion, that they're adamantly opposed to the cenotaph being moved, and that was in one of our reports as well. So is that able to be removed from that so we can leave that, or does this plan automatically assume that that's going to happen? And I'm really struggling with the fact that I can vote for this because it'll be at budget time, that there's no operating costs included, because I think it's really easy to make we'll do the pie in the sky, and then all of a sudden we get down to the nitty gritty and it's like, oh, what was $1 million is now $4 million, which is a huge tax increase. So, but I am very concerned about the cenotaph as well, because we heard very loud and clear from the Legions, they're very opposed to this.
Yeah, so through Your Worship to Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Thorpe. Yeah, we heard the same comments too about the Legion, and we're able to reach out to them recently and have a conversation with them. So I think what we have here is a concept. The idea is, if you saw the phasing, this would Dallas Square would be one of the last parts done, and any work there is done would be full consultation and asking them what they want to do. So these were ideas that came up, you know, through when we met with the public and everyone else. That's what it reflects. But the idea really was just I think the principle for Dallas Square is a place where we reflect and we respect people who served our country, and our goal was to find a way to enhance that. So I think that's still something that council probably wants to support, and how it actually looks will be determined at the detailed design. But it certainly would be done in full consultation with the Legion, because it's their area of town. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to weigh in on this. I firstly am very impressed overall with what's been presented to council tonight. I think it's visionary, it's sensible, the accessibility, the public safety of it, no more curbs to fall off, all of those things are important. And in reference to the curbs, I think of Dallas Square and the cenotaph. It is a cenotaph. It is not a burial site. It is a place where we gather once a year as a community to express thanks and remember. I can recall the enormous controversy in the city of Parksville, when it was town, I believe, or a village at that point, when they moved their what I would call more of a cairn than a cenotaph from the end of Memorial Avenue. Memorial Avenue having been planted with trees at the close and end of the First World War, and they moved it down to their community park. It was controversial, but in fairness, it also meant that more members of the public actually had access to and could see and feel part of the Remembrance Day ceremonies. So I would hope in time, with consultation with the Legion, that they will look at this design and accept that it, in fact, I think, gives a more prominent place. It's more view-worthy in terms of people coming to our community and seeing the cenotaph in the proposed placement area. With respect to the concerns about the water, look, it's a public square, and 364 days of the year it is a public square. I suspect that the people who have proposed the design have recognized the fact that it'll be a shallow pool, that you will drain it, you will place in probably a boards system that can be taken out year in, year out and raised level so that more can participate more conveniently. As we all know now, having attended the ceremonies when the various troops of RCMP and veterans and legionnaires and everybody else marches up, it is not a people-friendly place, to be quite candid. And it needs improvement, and it deserves improvement, and I think by improving it, it also shows respect for the purpose of the whole cenotaph. On all of the other issues, Councillor Thorpe is right. You know, it looks pretty, and there's a lot between looking pretty on the plans now and actually construction, and it's a long-term project. I appreciate Councillor Armstrong's concerns around maintenance, but I suspect in terms of a public cleaning perspective, without curbs up and down all of those streets, it will be much simpler for people to use appropriate cleaning machines to clean up the dust, the dirt, the whatever, than it would be with all the curbs that currently exist. And in terms of the enhancing business downtown, there are opportunities for setting up tables outside their premises, again, from a public safety and accessibility perspective, considerably enhanced. And I think that's what we have to consider. And I'll jokingly say this, tonight as a senior who's got to worry about sometimes where I walk, I would think as a senior coming downtown, the thought that I knew there were no curbs to trip over anywhere would be seen as a considerable improvement. The motion is that we endorse and direct staff to include the design Commercial Street as part of the 2023-2027 budget deliberations. That is all we are doing tonight. But I want to make it clear that what I've seen so far looks very promising. I think it's stimulating. And I appreciate Mr. Shaw's concerns. I have been outspoken on the issue of our street disorder for a very long time. And I will say, along with Councillor Bonner, if we are in the same boat in 10 years, there will be a great deal of other troubles that will follow as a consequence. We will be a society in terrible shape if we haven't ameliorated the issues that create the street disorder, that disturb all of us, that provide the source of continuing frustration, anger, disgust, sadness, that characterizes the attitudes of people left, right, and center in this community. So I have to be optimistic, and I want to be optimistic, and I believe what this plan speaks to is optimism for our community. I think it's exciting. I think we should endorse it tonight, and there will come the time where we have to make up our minds, whoever is sitting around this council table, as to cost, as to the final schemes. But in the meantime, it's a banner under which this individual is prepared to march until someone tells me there's something better. So I haven't, I won't say inspired, that's egotistical, but I haven't encouraged anyone else to say anything more tonight. The motion is made. All those in favor? And any opposed? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, everybody. Mr. Corson, team, design folks, thank you very much. The next is the 2021 Annual Municipal Report. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm here this evening to present the 2021 Annual Municipal Report. As outlined in Section 98 of the Community Charter, it requires municipalities in BC to publish an annual report before June 30th each year and make the report available for public review. The objectives of the municipal report are diverse and complex, and there are many ways to present the material contained in the report. This year's report is, the theme was resiliency, and we tried to reflect that in the overview of city services and operations, as well as the corporate strategic plan progress report. So again, the theme this year outlines the 4 major themes of council's strategic plan, and we try to highlight matters of resiliency throughout the report and kind of accumulate it all together in one package to show the work that was done in 2021 that the city accomplished. Also of note, the city was awarded a Canadian Award for Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada, GFOA, for its 2020 annual municipal report. The award is given to municipal governments that publish a report that is easily readable, efficiently organized, and clearly communicates the municipal government's financial picture. So that was an accomplishment. And this year marks the 18th annual report published by the City of Nanaimo. So any questions, and anybody else wishing to speak, Your Worship, I am sure you'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gurry. We are, because it is a municipal report, as required by the community charter, if anyone wishes to speak with respect to the annual report, they're welcome to do so. Seeing no one, the recommended motion moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the General Election Bylaw Amendment, Mail Ballot Provisions. Ms. Gurry, a very interesting report.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So based on Bill 10 that passed on June 17th, 2021, the changes to the legislation in the Local Government Act included in Bill 10 allow the provision and flexibility for local governments to amend their election bylaw to add extra ways that people can, residents can vote during municipal local government elections by extending the mail ballot voting for those that aren't just going to be absent or that are ill and unable to make it to the election, which is currently what we have in our bylaw. So based on the expansion of the requirements that we are allowed to do, we have amended our election bylaw, and it is required that any amendments to the election bylaw be done before July 4th of this year, and that is provided for in the legislation. So we are bringing forward an amendment to our election bylaw that allows for those extra voting opportunities.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Turley?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Ms. Gurry. So I came across kind of a conflict I think, in timing. And I'm hoping I'm reading it wrong, but under Section 5, mail ballot voting, number 5.3, number 1, it says an elector wishing to vote by mail shall apply between the start of nomination period and 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the general voting day by giving their application to vote by mail to the chief electoral officer. And then that looks to me like in a bit of a conflict because of timing. Under 5.4, number 2, Roman numeral 4, where it says mail or have delivered the outer envelope and its contents to the chief election officer at the address specified so that it is received no later than the close of the voting on the general voting day, which I read it as just 24 hours, and I don't know how that's possible.
So thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Turley. So in the first one that you noted, 5.3, 4.
No, 1.
1, sorry, an elector wishing to vote by mail shall apply between the start of nomination period and 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to general voting day by giving their application to vote by mail to the chief election officer. So this is their application to vote by mail, so it's not actually their mail ballot. And the reason the deadline is 4 p.m. is because up until 4 p.m. they can come into City Hall, fill out their application, and then vote right then and there, and or take their ballot home and hand deliver it to one specified location the next day, which we have, which is the Service and Resource Center voting polling station. So that then answers your next question, and the tight turnaround is we do have a cutoff for when you're allowed to mail it back to us. So after that deadline, if you come pick up or fill out an application, you have to hand deliver it. Mailing, obviously.
You're really confident to the post office. Thank you.
Always good to look for loopholes. Lawyers make a living doing that. Councillor Thorpe.
Are we ready for the
yes, let's do that, and then Councillor Armstrong can speak if she wishes after it's been.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. In that case, I will move that General Election Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7129.04, to bring the mail ballot provisions in line with the new provincial legislation pass first reading.
And seconded by Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. I'll move that General Election Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7129.04, pass second reading.
Seconded again. Councillor Bonner. Councillor Armstrong, you wish to speak to it? Please.
My question is to Ms. Gurry. We saw that there was a lot of voter issues in Toronto with over 200 votes not being counted, et cetera. Is there a plan in place for that if that happens here, or are we just those that didn't get their ballots, or if there was extra, like what's the plan for that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Armstrong. We try to account for and prepare for any unforeseen circumstance that may come up during an election. We have extra provisions and we detailed procedures going through for mail ballots, as well as extensive training for all of our polling stations and how to handle all of the residents that come through to vote. So through extensive training, through learning from best practices for trying to think of worst case scenarios, we do everything we can to try to foresee and come up with solutions to those types of worst case scenarios. However, we can't obviously prepare for or be prepared for any unknown that might occur, but we always do our best, and we have a lot of resilient, smart staff that are working for us and have in previous elections that are trained to try to crisis manage as those things come up. So I can't give you any fail-safes that we have in place, but we do our best to ensure that all precautions are taken and that we're prepared for anything.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that General Election Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7129.04, pass third reading.
Moved, seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is item D, Gender Diversity and Inclusion Recommendations from the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness. Mr. Van Horn, good evening.
Good evening. As you see, it's a fairly long title to a fairly long report, for which I apologize. I think there's a fair amount of detail in there as to how staff came to the concepts that they put forward for Council's consideration in response to the Advisory Committee's recommendations. Perhaps I'll just turn it over to Council, see if there are questions flowing from that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Mr. Van Horn. So I have no problem with the actual having it passed. The challenge I have is with under financial considerations, it states that with little or no cost. So I'm assuming, and probably incorrectly, that staff that have to take the training are doing so on their own time?
Through your worship to Councillor Turley, the staff cost of training for something like this is just generally considered, it's a part of somebody's workday. So if that's perhaps an inaccurate way of saying little to no cost, what we mean is the cost of having someone come in to provide the training tends to be fairly reasonable considering the number of people we can train at one time.
Okay, so, but there is a cost because they're not doing the job they would normally be doing, so. I know that's a bad way of looking at it, but that's okay.
Yeah, and a fair number of staff have received training on this. This has been something that's been in our city training calendar previously as well. And I know when we were having some extensive discussions about it around the senior leadership table, we realized that a lot of our recreation center employees have already done far more in depth in this than a lot of the rest of us at the city have. And so there's already been a lot done on this. It's just other parts of the organization playing a bit more catch up.
Thanks.
Councillor Bonner and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. I didn't see it in the report, and I don't know if you can even answer this here, but it seems to be that this is being offered to staff who wish to take it. And there was a conversation earlier about some other meeting about the concept of some staff having to take training. And I guess the other part of this is what would happen if an incident happened where a staff wasn't being inclusive to someone from the public at a facility. Would they then be required to take this training? I'm just kind of curious how all that works.
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, there's a few different concepts there. One, I think with any sort of training that we look to roll out, we try to triage it and get those that we feel is going to be the greatest impact most quickly in first. Mm-hmm. Any sort of job performance issue, rudeness to patron, whatever it might be, training is generally one of the components of addressing the problem. There's performance management or corrective action, but training like this, a good example of times is you hear about people being required to go to anger management training. It's in response to an issue to see if is there a gap in the person's understanding or knowledge, or is it a deliberate act? And I think it's trying to assess which of those is it, because going to train a person who is just not going to do it, or not going to uptake the training and change the behaviors, we need to deal with other ways.
Okay, good.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not actually sure all three of these need to be council motions. I think we're straying a little bit into operational type stuff, but since they're presented here, I'll move all three.
Seconded Councillor Armstrong. Any further discussion on the motions? If I may say, I think it's appropriate that staff be encouraged, but it is up to people to make their own decisions on this. I don't regard it as something that anyone should be obligated to do in this world, is to have to identify what they feel, believe, or are in terms of who they are. And in that sense, I think that the staff recommendation and the motion that's been seconded is the appropriate one. Councillor Martman?
Thank you. And just further to that, long before I retired from BCAA, as corporations, we were encouraging, I don't know if we made it mandatory, but I think everybody participated anyways. And this is what corporations are doing in order to make a more inclusive society.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Turley opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is consideration of other grant application, and that's Ms. Mercer. Good evening. Now, Council, let's try and not do the usual. The smaller the amount of money, the longer the debate.
Thank you, Your Worship. The city has received another grant application from the Nanaimo Minor Baseball Association for funding towards their 13U AAA Baseball Provincial Tournament they're hosting July 28th to August 1st. So under normal circumstances, we would bring this to the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, but due to timing constraints and the date of the tournament, we're bringing it to you today. The organization does qualify for emergency funding under the other grant stream and has requested $6,000 in funding to assist with their upcoming tournament costs. So staff have provided council with several options, with the recommendation being to award the Nanaimo Minor Baseball Association with a $5,000 other grant. So this would show support and cover required fees, but leave the more discretionary fees for the association to cover, and that was the thought behind the $5,000. The annual budget for this stream is $7,000, and nothing has been spent to date, so there is money there. So I will leave it to you all to decide how you want to deal with this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mercer. I know Councillor Thorpe has a question and may wish to move a motion on this one.
I was going to move the recommendation, Your Worship, and I'll speak to it if there's a seconder.
And seconded, Councillor Bonner. Please do.
Thank you, Your Worship. I recognize that this would normally have come through the Finance and Audit Committee, but because of time considerations, it's here in front of us tonight. And I've read the report. And it seems to me that this organization qualifies for the criteria. I did wonder about the amount of the request and the amount of the recommendation. The request was for $6,000 and the recommendation is $5,000. But I'm going to support that because I note that that amount of $5,000 covers the cost of umpires, programs, team supplies, medals, and field supplies. And the only thing left outstanding beyond that is related to scorekeepers and concession people, which I would have assumed would be volunteers anyway. Maybe I'm wrong there in this particular case, but I think the $5,000 amount is appropriate and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Having run provincial tournaments in the past, I have a question, financial question with regard to the grant application and the amount. And I'm noticing there's a distinct lack of information with regard to sponsorships and revenue from concession. And unless it's included in the 2022 budget, but I don't know when that was approved because there's no date on it. So my financial years are kind of up in the air right at the moment. Not that I wouldn't want to support it, but I like to have all the information so I can make a decision on it. Unless I'm missing something, I don't see it there.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Turley. That, I don't have detailed information on that. They do have a miscellaneous income on their financial statements that could encompass that. This sounds like they were a late awarder of this tournament, so I think some of the expenses caught them unaware. So, and that's why they're coming to council looking for some funding to help them cover the costs that they hadn't anticipated.
But it would be the budget, not the financial statement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Motion carries unanimously. The next is what is on the agenda, if you read it as item 12M, Development Permit Application Number DP 1252, respecting 515, 529, and 635 Terminal Avenue North. Mr. Holm, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try and be brief here. I understand there are a number of delegations here to speak to this. If you could please bring up the attachment B, the context plan on the screen overhead, the context map, that would be helpful. What's proposed is a 69-unit development on 3 existing parcels. You can see them outlined in red and hatched on the screen overhead. They're located on Terminal Avenue, between Terminal and the ENN Railway, and between Townsite and Cypress, the nearest cross streets. Again, 69 units. It's proposed under the existing Core 2 zoning for the properties. The proposal would require consolidation of the 3 parcels that exist there today. The properties are within the Newcastle neighborhood area, and the density that's requested or proposed there is supported under the existing Core 2 zoning. And if you could please bring up attachment E, the building elevations. There is a minor height variance requested, 1.5 meter height variance. You can see outlined in red on the screen, or identified by the red line on the screen there. So a minor height variance. Important to note, I guess, that if 61% of the parking is provided underground currently, if 75% of the parking were provided underground, the building would be allowed to be 4 meters taller than would it be allowed to be 18 meters tall. So it by providing some additional parking underground, a minor amount of additional parking underground, they could actually access substantial additional building height. What's proposed here, there's 61% of the parking provided underground, so they do require a minor height variance of 1.5 meters, but that doesn't result in any additional density. The density is as supported in the Core 2 zone, so just a minor height variance there. The project is 6 floors. You can see that's the front-facing Terminal Avenue, 6 floors fronting Terminal Avenue. And if you could please bring up attachment H, the building renderings, you get an idea of what it looks like. So 6 floors fronting Terminal. It steps back nicely on the upper floors, and it has units on the ground floor that have direct access to Terminal. The main building pedestrian entrance is from Terminal. The vehicle access is also from Terminal. You can see it on the left-hand side of the image there. It accesses parking in the rear, and the proposal also provides all of the required parking under the city's off-street parking bylaw. The rear of the building, so facing, you can see there, facing the ENN Railway, is 5 stories. The proposal is, it includes, like I mentioned, it's stepped back on the upper floors to diminish the massing, and includes heritage elements that are, I guess, reminiscent of a railway station, is as the project's name implies. It's been referenced as the station. The design panel reviewed the application in January and recommended some revisions that the design team has incorporated into the proposal that's presented here. I'm happy to take questions. Otherwise, I know there are delegations available to or wanting to speak to the application, but I'll be available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, just a question on the access. It's going to go into Terminal. Does that require MOTI's approval?
That section, through your worship to Councillor Armstrong, that section is actually city highway. So that's owned by the city.
Terminal?
Yes, that part of it is.
Highway 19, the whole part?
The portion of Terminal between Brecken and Stewart is actually city-owned.
Thank you.
Yeah. And sorry, I should have mentioned that. You just reminded me, if you don't mind just indulging me a little bit more. As part of, it's outlined in the report, but there is a right-of-way that's being secured through the proposal. Eventually there will be a lane running, and it'll take, it'll have to be secured piecemeal through development of properties as they occur, but it's already been started and is proposed to be continued as far as securing that for the future. A right-of-way to secure a lane that'll run between Town Site and Cypress eventually. So the access is off Terminal currently, and it is supportable in that location with sight lines and the access design. But in the long term, as properties develop in that block, we'll see a laneway that'll run between Cypress and Town Site. So to parallel the ENN, and we'll remove additional accesses from Terminal. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Himmons?
Thank you, Your Worship. Also about access, I'm just curious about the language. Vehicle access to the site will be via a drive aisle from Terminal Ave. What does that mean?
It's a private drive aisle, so just a driveway.
So a right turn off of Terminal into that private driveway that gives access to the building.
Yeah, that's right.
And eventually punching through to the laneway when development.
And at the time the laneway is developed, that's an unknown timeline at this point, but they have, this proposal includes plans to decommission the access to Terminal at that point. But that access in the interim has been reviewed and determined to meet all required standards for access in that area. Thanks.
Thank you.
Your Worship, I'm not sure if one of the delegations, it might be named iPad right now, so I'm not sure if you can hear me. The individual that we just let into the Zoom meeting, if you could actually change your name so we know who you are when it's your turn to speak, that would be great. Thank you.
I believe it's Ms. Schultz to be via Zoom, correct?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Ms. Schultz, if you are on the Zoom call, could you please identify yourself?
I appreciate an individual is indicating she's not here, but is she coming in via Zoom? Do we know? Negative. All right. Well, then let's get on with Dominique Lassonde, then, the first delegation.
Sue and myself, I'm Dave. We sort of put together a set of PowerPoints. I sent in PowerPoints.
All right. Well, I'm not that particular about the order, so Mr. Croft, if you want to come down and we'll get the...
Sue and I were going to run through the PowerPoints together, so Dom's going to fill in for Sue, if that's okay.
I think I can stretch the rules far enough to allow Mr. Lassonde. You are separate items, though. You're entitled to 5 minutes each.
Okay, we'll try and keep it to 5 or 6.
Okay.
Yeah. Sue had a few things to say, but we'll for sure under 10.
All right. Are we ready to roll it? Then, if you could identify yourself, give us your address, and you'll have 5 minutes. And I'll tell you at the 4-minute mark, you've got a minute left. Okay?
Sure. So this play goes forward.
Yeah.
Back. Okay. So back to here.
And if you can identify yourself and your address for the record, please.
Sure. So my name is David Croft. I'm a professional engineer by trade. I live at 540 Alderan Avenue. And Susan Schultz is our neighbor. What's your address? 525?
Yeah, 523 Avenue, and I'm her husband, so basically represent the same. I also a resident of Alderan and a veteran. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So we're 2 streets up from the proposed development. I've lived there for about 20 years. Unfortunately, the way they've drawn the Newcastle, not unfortunate, but our neighborhood didn't have an association, so we were never informed of this development. Recently, we found out, we've over the weekend asked neighbors. A lot of people directly in front of this development had no idea about it. The blue dot on that slide is the 3 lots approximately where they're proposing the 69 units. And our main issues with it are traffic, lack of traffic study, and concerns about parking. Terminal Avenue is a 4-lane busy highway. I can't remember the speed limits. I think it's 60, but people often travel a lot faster than that. They're coming around a corner, and we're asking for 69, new owners to turn right onto this highway. If they want to go north, they got to circle either through Vancouver Avenue, back up through Cypress, or they would have to circle right up town site, and the majority of traffic would probably go up through the Brecken School, which is a school zone. But we've found the savvy residents that are used to this circle about, they cut through Holly Avenue because there's no school zone, so they can speed through Holly, speed through the little side streets, and get heading north faster than they can. I don't have a pointer, but you'll see north of the blue dot is the Crest Apartments. That's the Molnar Group. It's a larger building. I believe it's 120 units. The property's at least twice as big. It's a much larger property for parking. The big difference there is they have Cypress and they have a stoplight. So all those residents can go out of their building, turn right on Cypress, they wait for the stoplight and safely turn on or off. So that's our initial concerns with traffic. I'm going to, Don, maybe if you want to talk about, I think, there.
Yeah, so this was taken around 4:30 from the proposed entry and exit of the multi-residential family unit. As you can see, you know, two-way traffic going south. That's just under normal circumstances. Don't put any coming in and out of the entry. And then from there, the spillover, obviously from any 69, so 69 units, you're talking about 1 car per unit, maybe 2, plus visitors, creeping north onto our streets, basically putting our streets into sort of a parking lot mode. So that's one of the concerns we're raising here is to...
It's going to be like a Frogger game, like trying to turn right onto there or turn left illegally. The early proposal from Park Shore Developments was for a smaller building. My understanding was the City of Nanaimo's traffic engineering department recommended against turning onto the highway. So this idea of the laneway in behind the building came up so that people could go across, go south, not turning onto the highway, and then turn right onto town site without, but that laneway does not exist. And since that time, the developers increased the size of the building. So we've got our engineering department saying we recommend against it. Meanwhile, over the last months, it's gotten taller and bigger. And we're still going ahead, it seems, with letting all this traffic on, like, do this risky merge onto a highway. For me, it's the city, it's an accident waiting to happen. We're buying liability. We've got people recommending against it, and we're still letting it get bigger with this idea that in the future we'll fix it later.
1 minute, but I'll be generous because there's 2 of you and you're going to be separate delegations.
Sure. So Don, do you want to talk a little bit? This is just the breakdown of the units. So Sue was going to talk about some of this stuff.
Yeah. Gosh, I wasn't brief. But anyways,
Point
as
of
you can
order.
see there, basically the number of units, studios, 1 bed, 2 bed, putting down 69 units of 1 car per unit, call it conservatively 100 cars. With the laneway that's being proposed, and obviously not secured yet, and God knows when is that going to be secured, we're talking about an overflow of cars here per unit, and then again, having those cars creeping north, parking onto side streets, our streets, streets further up, and then that's not including, again, visitors or anybody else.
There's basically 1 parking stall per condo. So unless there's a lot of people, it's all single people living in the building, or people with no cars. I'm hard pressed to think of a lot of couples that don't have 2 cars. This is Holly Avenue. We see cars already from the building at 679 Terminal parking on Holly Avenue, partly because that building's on the same issue. They're coming off the highway, and they have issues parking on in their building, so they're parking in our neighborhood already. So we're talking order of magnitude more of this potential issue. The other thing here is that this is the ENN bike trail, so we're encouraging the overflow is parking on the ENN bike trail. Yeah, Sue's going to talk a bit about this, but yeah, this has already been presented by the city recommendations, or the size. It's 6 stories, 7 if you count the elevators. It was marketed as family. It's all, there's only 4 2-bedroom units. Mostly it's suites or 1 bedroom. Yeah, and so our concerns again are we don't feel there's been a proper traffic study.
It's irrelevant.
Parking overflow into our neighborhood. Councillor Thorpe talked about parking downtown. Our neighborhood, if we go way back when, there's no big parking lot nearby or empty space. So for additional parking, the overflow parking, there's no front street or back
I was
street.
going to say, I'm going to ask you to wrap up. I allowed you to mix your presentations on the basis you'd each have 5 minutes. You've certainly had more than 5 in Mr. Lassonde.
Sure.
So if there's a couple very quick points, please.
Okay, the building's increased in size. It's potential sales of, I don't know, $8–10 million more. We would like to propose that the motion to approve a variance is delayed until a traffic study is complete and a parking study is complete, and our community's consulted.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Questions from council, Councillor Martman and Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. However, before us today as council, I believe that the development permit, and staff can confirm or not, is already, it meets all the requirements. It meets parking, it meets the building, it meets everything. The only thing we're voting on tonight is a 1.5 meter difference in building height from 14 to 15.5. We're not debating traffic, we're not debating the units, we're strictly looking at a variance of height. That's all we can consider, because everything else, I believe, has met the criteria.
Mr. Holm?
Through your worship, the discretionary aspect of the application is the variance. It does comply with the Core 2 zoning. As far as traffic on and application of this size, and given the location as well, staff would not request or recommend a traffic impact assessment. It does meet the proposal does meet the requirements of the parking bylaw. I should have mentioned as well that obviously, there is significant area provided for, or the appropriate area, I guess, provided for secure bicycle storage. As mentioned, I guess the development's also well served by other transportation options. It's on a bike route. It does have access to the ENN rail trail, as well as the waterfront walkway in short distance as well. So it is well serviced. And yeah, to the question though, that the discretionary part of this is really the variance, the height variance. What we have identified in the report, and I should have spoken to, is that the proposal complies with all other aspects of zoning and parking, off-street parking requirements, as well as the applicable development permit area guidelines.
Right, thank you.
If I could just say though, the part of the variance is adding a 6-story and additional units.
And we appreciate that, but it's height that is the issue for us. It's not how many units fall under that, if it falls within the rules, and that's the point. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. You mentioned in your presentation that the engineering department was against this. Where did you receive that information?
I was reading on the city, sort of the history of this development, but early on, they've worked hard to go through a few variations. But early on, the city traffic engineering recommended against having vehicles coming on off the highway. And this whole idea of the laneway, it's better, it's safer, but it does not exist.
Thank you. I actually agree with that as well. I'm very concerned about the traffic going on to Terminal, but thank you.
And we don't know, I think we'd all feel more assured if they'd bought, going north, they have to buy 3 or 4 properties to get their laneway. Going south, they have to buy the hotel, the protocol. And I understand they approached them even to have their back lane, and we're told no. So for us, it doesn't seem like protocol is wanting to sell and provide that laneway. And it also goes right through the protocol's property. It kind of wrecks their property, because if they ever redevelop, they have to have the laneway right through the middle of their building.
Question after for Mr. Holmes, after the delegation is finished.
All right, Councillor Hemmons, are you a question for the delegation? No? All right. If there's no further questions for the delegations, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming tonight, your comments.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong, question for staff?
Yeah. Is there a reason why we didn't do a traffic impact study? Because terminal is extremely busy. I can see people doing left turn lanes, and I mean, it's just, as they said, it's an accident waiting to happen.
Generally through your worship to Councillor Armstrong, we generally for that scale of a development, we wouldn't ask for a traffic impact assessment.
But this is a really extremely busy road that's backed up for a long time during the morning, and people are going to take risks because they're not going to want to wait to get out onto the roadway, and some are going to try and turn left, which is illegal.
You're right. There's certain movements they won't be able to make, but yeah, typically for this scale of a development, we wouldn't require a traffic impact assessment.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. We do have a recommended motion. Moved by Councillor Martman, seconded by Councillor Brown. Discussion on this? Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I want to thank the delegation for coming. But in terms of the development and what we're actually being considered to, we're being asked to consider tonight, it is the height variance. And I'm going to support the height variance. I would suggest that the delegation really connect, either organize themselves into a community association or really connect in with the Newcastle, because developments like this are going to keep coming. And I think the more that people can be organized to have their voices heard, the better in this. So thank you to those folks who came, and I'm in support of this.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Councillor Hemmons for her comments and Councillor Martman, because that is what is before us from a legal perspective, is the variance, and it's a height variance of 1.5 meters, which is not extraordinary by any standards. And I appreciate the concerns around traffic. Traffic is going to continue to grow in this community for a variety of reasons, but candidly, when I look at the variance for height, which is minor, versus the construction of this number of units in a community that is desperate for housing of any kind or quality, and as I've said many times before, what is today's expensive housing may be tomorrow's moderately priced housing. I think that makes this a relatively easy decision, notwithstanding that it will change the neighborhood. I'm familiar with these properties. One of them belonged to the Wilson family, who operated the Scotch Bakery, which us old-timers miss terribly. The next was the Turners, Benny and Winnie Turner. Benny had a logging company here in the heyday, and I'm sure Councillor Turley can probably tell me who the third property belonged to. He tells me he's going to have to think about it. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We are past the recess time. Ms. Gurry will take 10 minutes, and then we're on to what was formerly 12F, which is the proposed bylaw amendments to the subdivision control bylaw.
Your Worship, can I make a suggestion to the order? We have another one that has a delegation attached to it, and they are here. Could we consider, as we did for the previous one, moved it forward?
You're referring to the application for 5601 Hammond Bay Road?
Yes.
If council doesn't object.
Your Worship, I'm not sure if he's online yet or if he's here in person, and he's only here to answer questions. He's not here to present, but
okay.
But yes, we can do that. It's council's pleasure.
Thank you. All right, 10 minutes, everyone. Reconvene at 9:30.
This is the 2018 redux of the lighting at Nanaimo's historic bastion. I've had the pleasure of being part of the relighting project on this amazing building in downtown Nanaimo. So what we did is we've replaced the original high-pressure sodium lights, which basically did an okay job of lighting up the bottom 10 feet of the building, and replaced them with modern LED lighting that has the capacity to change color. We can run through a number of different colors that we have pre-programmed here in a pink, a purple, a green. Probably my favorite on here is Rainbow Chase for Pride Week. It'll actually run all the way around the building all the time.
With this new technology, organizations can now request that the bastion be lit to promote their cause by going to the City Nanaimo website and following the instructions. Go to Your Government, Bastion Lighting Requests, complete the lighting request form, and submit. You will hear from us within a couple days if your request has been approved, and the bastion will be lit in the colors that you have requested. If you have any questions, please contact the Mayor's office at 250-755-4400.
So the next time you're in downtown Nanaimo at night, come on and check out the new dynamic lighting at the Bastion.
Hey, Tiana. Hey. It sure is the coldest rink in town.
Whoa! Yeah, buddy!
Nice save, James!
Wow, your goalie is keeping you guys in the game. Cheers.
Oh, man, that's hot.
Sorry, that's the way I like it. Oh. Go, 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 go! Penalty shot!
Scalds from hot drinks are a leading cause of hospitalization for children under 5.
2 minutes, stand in the front, unsportsmanlike conduct.
Hot tea and coffee will cause serious burns to a child in less than a second.
Got it, kid? Use the lid.
What we have here is the Real Ice technology that was installed at the Nanaimo Ice Center. It allows us to use cold water from traditionally hot water that we used to use for making ice. Basically, the water will come in through the bottom, go in through a vortex idea, making the air bubbles microscopic in size, which makes a better, more dense sheet of ice.
Differences that you'll see with the Real Ice is there's less snow developed, so that's easier for cleaning, and also it's a denser, harder, clear ice. So the ice skaters will certainly enjoy that. And the city plans to implement Real Ice at our other 2 arenas as well. Some of the other efficiencies we've implemented in this facility are LED lights in some areas, and we've also, in the last few years, installed a higher efficiency refrigeration system, which lowers our energy costs. Both Zambonis at our facility are now electrically operated, so there's no harmful emissions, and they're very quiet as well. So what this means for the city is that we're able to use less energy and also reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions, which is more beneficial to the environment.
Welcome to the city's South Fork Water Treatment Plant. This is where we take water that we would collect in our lakes and rivers, pipe it, we filter it and treat it before we send it off to the city's distribution system in your taps. This facility actually does a better job than most home filtration systems. The water that comes into your home that you use every day, that you bathe in every day, that you wash your clothes in every day, is cleaner than anything you can get anywhere.
Here you see filtration in action. It's kind of like watching paint dry. There's nothing to really see. But if you look in the tank, you'll see the froth on the top. That's dissolved organic matter, and when we aerate the tank, that froths up, and that's why that's up there.
We take all the little particles, all the organic matter, any insects or bugs that might be in the water, and pathogens that we're trying to filter out, they're all gone. We filter the water using a series of membranes.
So what we're looking at here is a membrane filtration module. So when I talk about the membranes filtering the water, this is what we're filtering the water with. And while you might think that the water flows through like the baleen of a whale, it's not true. These are hollow fiber membranes. So each of these little tiny strands are hollow, just like a shoelace. And the membrane is wrapped around the outside of these tiny little hollow fibers. So these sit in a bath of water, raw water, and then we pull the water through the wall of the straw or the shoelace, and then it travels along and it collects in this vessel at the end here. And this hole at the end is where we pull the water out.
And the membranes are like an almost impermeable waterproof layer that we pull the water through. So now we're just left with clean, pure drinking water. Take care.
You are looking at Unit 400 from the City of Nanaimo Public Works Department. This truck is called our paint truck. It puts down most of the center line in the City of Nanaimo. Right now on the back, we have Holly. Today she is in charge of keeping the line straight. She can move the wheel back and forth right or left, which controls this paint gun. And then right behind the paint system, there's a glass beads that are dispensed onto the fresh wet paint for retroreflectivity at night. The painted lines can last 1 or 2 years. Most center lines in Nanaimo are painted every year. The white crosswalks and stop bars in thermoplastic can last anywhere from 2 to 7 years, depending on traffic flow. And on the back here, Derek will be kind enough to be dropping cones onto the fresh wet paint so vehicles do not drive over it. There's a lot of moving parts, high pressure, traffic, a lot of things going on at one time, and we're all working together. There's a lot of prep work before to make the lines straight. There's a lot of pulling of lines. Most of our equipment has guidelines and markers. It's a very rewarding job working for the Public Works Department. Lots of things go on and you stay in touch with the heartbeat of our city.
We're here today to make a couple street names. There was some vandalism in town, and we're just going to make replacements. In the roads today, we're doing our Dundas Street and Bruce Avenue. They're all 8-inch, and we use 3 different sizes, mostly 24-inch, 32-inch, and 36-inch. We do use a consistent font with street names. This is actually my metal blank, so the only material here is the material that I actually will cut out in vinyl. From here, we have to take out the vinyl that's not needed, which is the outer. So all we want to do is save the inside borders. From here, we actually have to put a transfer tape on it. And what this does is it allows us to take the blue vinyl and pull it away from the clear backing that it's on so we can apply it to our aluminum blank. Now that we have our 2 sheeted piece of vinyl, we take our aluminum blank, which has high intensity diamond grade, which you can see behind me. We have all different colors. We have orange, yellow, white, depending on the type of signs. Most of our white signs are regulatory, and the yellow ones are warning signs. And right here, all I'm doing is pushing the transfer tape a little tighter to the vinyl. And then from there, we peel it back, our plastic, which basically leaves us with a big sticker. We put it on the aluminum. And when we're done here, we take our transfer tape off, and as you can see, we're left with Dundas.
We're here at Bruce and Dundas. Somebody's stolen the street names that were here, so we're here to replace them. Our sign shop has just generated us 2 signs, so I'm going to go through the process of putting it together and reinstalling the street names. First thing, we got to center the signs. We do everything on this truck. We've got all the equipment on here to build, install, remove, repair, whether it's street signs, street names, posts, banners, Christmas decorations, and so forth. I'm going to
All right, Council, if I may, let's call this back to order. I think we have agreement that we will call forward development variance permit application number DVP 433560 Hammond Bay Road, which is item 12K on the agenda. Mr. Holm?
Great, thank you, Your Worship. This development variance permit is proposed to support a 2-lot subdivision on the subject property, which is zoned R10. It's a residential steep slope zone. It's located on Hammond Bay, and it's the nearest cross street there is Norrisey, and it's also bisected by Norton Road as well. If you could pull up attachment B, the context map, it'll identify the properties there. So again, this is a proposal to support a subdivision, a variance to support a subdivision. And if you could pull up attachment D, that'll show you the subdivision plan. It's a 2-lot subdivision that's proposed, and what the variances are proposed largely to allow the existing building on proposed lot 2, as you can see there on the overhead, to be able to remain on proposed lot 2. Proposed lot 1 is intended to be developed as a future 8-unit development with sort of a multifamily format, with the development landing on the portion of lot 1 between Norton and Hammond Bay, which is sort of a flatter, already disturbed portion of the site. In the future, the portion of lot 1 above Norton, so to the south of Norton, surrounding lot 2, that would be retained as green space through the development of the remainder of lot 1 and be protected. It's largely treed right now. As I'll bring up the, if you could bring up attachment 3, the aerial photo, you'll see that. So what's proposed in order to allow the subdivision to occur, so you can see the portion south of Norton Road there is quite heavily treed, and the portion to the north of Norton Road, where future development would occur, between Hammond Bay and Norton there on the overhead. So what's proposed here is a lot depth variance from 30 meters to 26.72 meters, and as well a rear yard variance from 7.5 to 1.7 meters. The rear yard variance is supportable, given that the proposed lot would be sufficient to accommodate the proposed use on lot 2, the existing residential dwelling, as well, there'd be substantial green space and no other neighbors anticipated on the green portion of future Lot 1 to the south of Norton Road. I know the applicant is present. If council has any questions, I'm also happy to take any questions on this one, but I've nothing more to say. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mr. Holm. Brock Williamson is here available to take questions if necessary. And I wonder if council has any questions. I'm not seeing any, Mr. Williamson. You may lose your place in the sun tonight.
Oh, great.
Someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Sorry to keep you waiting so long tonight. Just to stand up and be counted. Nice to see you both. All right, we are now back to what was 12F, which is the proposed bylaw amendments to the subdivision control bylaw 1989, number 3260, Schedule A, Manual of Engineering Standards and Specifications. That is a mouthful, and Mr. Rosen, I'm not going to pretend we understand all of the complexities of this, but you will simplify it for us, I'm sure.
I'll do my best, Your Worship. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. So this item is an amendment to the engineering standards. It's an update. We tend to try and complete these updates about every 2 to 3 years, just to bring things up to date in terms of regulations, policies, community expectations, and so on. The last major update was in 2020, and this proposed update, it's much smaller than usual, and it really only includes a small number of critical items. The focus on this update is primarily focused on geotechnical reporting and seismic considerations for utilities and roads. And there's a few other housekeeping items related to road cross-sections for consistency reasons and so on. In terms of consultation, the proposed changes were sent out to the manual holder community for about 3 weeks, and we received no comments during that. So Council has a recommended motion to start the bylaw update, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm therefore looking to Councillor Thorpe, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Subdivision Control Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 3260.06, text amendments and drawing replacements to the Manual of Engineering Standards and Specifications pass first reading.
Seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. I'll move that Subdivision Control Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 3260.06 pass second reading.
Seconded Councillor Martman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Subdivision Control Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 3260.06 pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is G, 24-hour parking bylaw exemption. That was going to be introduced by Mr. Sims, but we have Mr. Rosen. We do not think of you as a second string, by the way.
I'm sure Mr. Sims is enjoying his vacation. So this report is in response to a council motion seeking to explore options for providing more parking latitude for certain residences. Staff have completed the background research and have looked at comparable communities' approaches to the matter. Nanaimo currently has a 24-hour limit to parking, but the ticketing process actually takes quite a bit longer than that because the bylaw officers have to verify the time frame and so on. Now, we recognize that some members of the community find it challenging to adhere to the time frame limit. However, there's important operational reasons to maintain the vehicle turnover. The staff recommendation is to maintain the status quo. However, if council would like to try extending the duration from 24 hours to something longer, we're recommending potentially 72 hours. There is a second option for council to consider that. We have Mr. Rose here in case council has any specific questions about this. We'd be happy to discuss.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Rosen, I'm curious why we don't have resident exempt stickers. So if we have 24-hour parking limits, that's presumably for businesses and et cetera, but in residential areas, I believe we have exemption for residents. Would it apply in this scenario, and if not, why?
Through your worship, Councillor Hemmons, I'll hand this question over to Mr. Rose here.
I apologize. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
No, I was curious, the 24-hour parking regulation, why wouldn't we allow residents to be exempt from that? Like, I know we have 2-hour parking in other places of the city, but we say residents exempt. So why don't we say residents exempt for this specific one?
So the way the bylaw is written, the exemption is for the posted regulation, whether it's 2 hours, 4 hours. The exemption doesn't carry forward onto the bylaw regulations. So.
Okay, I know Councillor Armstrong's going to follow up. I might have another question there.
Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, I just have a real big problem with this. This is a bunch of seniors that we know that are living there. They've lived there for years. They've never had problems, and now recently we do. We got a petition with over 70-some names requesting that they be allowed to park because the city, in all its wisdom, again, did not provide parking on these places. So we said we'll park on the streets, which we've heard numerous times. So I'm very concerned that we're penalizing our very vulnerable population, and I don't understand why they can't park on the street with resident exemptions. I mean, we have residents parking on streets all over this city for longer than 12, 72. You know, I've seen cars on my street parked on the street for 30 days straight with no issues.
So I apologize, I missed the question, but why, if I'm understanding it, why can we not extend this exemption onto the bylaw? And the way the bylaw is written, it just doesn't apply. It's only intended to capture those posted signage regulations. And so one of the things that we really struggled with is the competition of street space and the need to balance opportunity for everybody. And so there are some areas where, you know, people go, frankly, undetected parking for beyond the 24 hours. And for the most part, this regulation is only actioned through complaint. And so this is something that Mr. LaBerge and I spoke on quite extensively about how much his department receives requests for enforcement of it already, and there's some reservation about opening the door to allow more extended parking and what that could result in different neighborhoods, whether they're mixed use or residential. So we've already, I think, in the report, there is some notations about how many calls for service we already receive, and so it's a difficult decision, and there's a lot to consider with it. But
I guess one of my concerns is our request was to allow residents to park on residential streets for more than 24 hours, yet I don't see any options that allow that. There's got to be something that would allow that, whether we have to rewrite the bylaw or...
So with the second option, we have proposed a scenario where we could run a pilot project to extend the time limit up to 72 hours.
For me, Your Worship, and maybe this is Ms. Curry, I would like to see a motion where we can allow resident exempt parking even up for 30 days, because I just don't think it's right that our seniors who are, and it's mostly seniors that we heard from, 70 of them, that, you know, have issues, they struggle, they have mobility issues, they still need their vehicles, they're not safe, they don't feel safe on transit, et cetera, or the transit stops are a long way, and I think it's very unfair that I just struggle with it. Sorry. I'll wait to see what other people have to say.
Councillor Martman?
Thank you. I myself have concerns about this too, and I'm going to be transparent. It's Selby Street that concerns me the most, being a seniors residence, being at the time it was built, it wasn't built with the correct parking allotment. And I see that Victoria does not have a time limit restriction, period, right? I'm not suggesting we go that way, but I'm suggesting that maybe we could look at an area like site-specific and go Selby Street, and people could register their license plate numbers as residents, and we've got that technology. And if anybody else in this city can give me the same criteria that Selby has, we could look at their site as well. But I'm wondering if there isn't something we can do that's site-specific to Selby that allows residents to be exempt. Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to staff. My understanding, and maybe it's been changed in the last year, the 200 block of Milton Street on the east side does have signage indicating that's residential parking. Now, has that changed, or is that, that's one, because one of my former staff members lives right in that block, and I drive by it fairly frequently, and I see the signage, but I haven't looked lately, so.
Through your worship, I don't, I'd have to look at our signage database, but I don't have any recollection of making any resident exempt changes recently.
So my question is, if it can be done there, or has been done there, why not Prideaux Street on one side of the street, on this, would be on the west side, I guess?
So to come back to the previous discussion, so the exemption really only applies to a posted time limit restriction. So if it's a 2 or 4 hour, so it's the signage restriction, not the bylaw itself, because what you would then be asking for is an exemption from the bylaw outright, as opposed to just the
where there's posted signs 2 or 4 hour parking only.
Yes.
Residential is exempt.
Yes.
So is that an option to have that changed to that way?
So if I'm sort of thinking this through, the exemption, so the difficulty is that it's an exemption from a bylaw now, not from the signage, the signed regulation. And so it would have to be, I'm not quite actually clear on how we would write up a permit to exempt only a portion of the bylaw.
But if you made the bylaw on that street, so that street is 2 to 4 hour limited parking, and then have the exemption applied to that.
So through your worship, one of the scenarios that we have looked at is probably a little more in line with what a community like Vancouver does, where they actually identify different zones and have different applications within those zones. And that's something we can absolutely consider. It's a substantially higher level of service, and it's quite a bit more complicated than just establishing or registering a license plate with somebody. There would need to be determinations as to how we would select or not people who would be eligible for that relaxation or that exemption. And so that is another, we have Mr. LaBerge and I have talked about that a bit, and because of the complexities and the additional level of service we would be embarking on, there would definitely need to be some discussion around a business case, but because additional staffing resources would be required for that. So it seemed very, probably a little bit more elaborate than when we sort of thought was on the table right now, but that is something that was discussed as a sort of potential scenario.
If I could just, so basically, the comparison you'd have is, for example, Milton Street 200 block, the actual amount of staff time that is taken to police, for lack of a better term, that particular stretch of street would be a comparable to what would then have to be paid for Prideaux Street. Is that a fair comparison?
Well, I think what you would end up having to do is create a zone, and for sort of consistency of language, let's say the downtown urban center. So we've got a footprint that says this is an area where we're going to create an exemption or a relaxation from something. And so we would have to come back and amend the bylaw and then create the administrative process to administer that. And then we could then start exploring the procedures to enforce that or to navigate that, whether it's through our LPR processes or a different option.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Bonner and then Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. This sort of conversation was what I was hoping would be in this report, because the report asks for outlining options for council to consider, and we're not getting any options here. The one option, which isn't an option, is just don't do anything. And the other option is 72 hours and on a temporary basis. So we have one option, basically, is to do a 72 hours. So I wanted to see how can we help these people, and if it's a question of they have to register all their license plates and it's going to take more people, then that's an option, right? And then we can consider that, okay, this is going to cost one full-time person. Do we want a business case for it, right? But that we're not getting any of that in here, and I'm hearing it now, which is great, because now those are some options. So I just want to help these people, with their cars, and who obviously cannot afford or cannot even physically park it 3 blocks away and then and leave it there and keep moving it. So that's what I'm trying to do, is how do we help these people that obviously have a problem, because they've come to us at council and made, I think, a pretty good pitch. So that's what I think is missing from this report, is we don't have the plethora of options that we could do and what it might cost. And that's kind of what I was hoping to get out of this report. I'm just not seeing it. So I don't want to make a decision on this because I don't agree with both. So I don't know what to do. Sorry.
Councillor Hemmens and Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I concur with the comments of Councillor Bonner. One of the pieces of information that I would have been interested in is the report indicates that approximately 31% of calls for service for bylaws or parking violations, but I'd be curious how much of the overall portfolio that is. So if it's 31% of traffic calls, but traffic calls are only 2%, then that's different. So without that information, I feel like I can't really make sense of that number. So I'm just thinking out loud here. We have a bit of an access issue. This is really about council is trying to secure parking for residents who are either seniors or, moving their car every 24 hours is not workable for them. And we have this report that I don't feel confident making a decision on. So I'm curious about sending this to the ACAIA committee, because it is an accessibility issue, and having that group chew on seniors' access, et cetera.
Your Worship, may I suggest that if you're of a mind to refer it back to staff for a more comprehensive report. I think what staff is pointing out to you is that it's complicated. There's going to be a lot of unintended consequences with this section, and it will open, you probably have to go with a zone model, because your criteria will be that they're seniors or something. Well, what about the other seniors? So it's not that it's wrong, it's just that probably it's safer to have an area planned for parking, and this is embedded in it. Just have one stretch of one street might be a little trickier, and the bylaw probably doesn't permit it right now. So I think what you're clearly directing us to do or asking for is a more comprehensive report with options to implement something that looks at this and maybe identify some of these challenges that staff are expecting that might go with it, because it could end up being something that others want as well. And that may not be a bad thing. It may be part of the city. And we all have been to Vancouver, where we park in residence-only zones, and there's, you have to look where you go. So I think we're familiar with the concept in Victoria. So I think if council is looking for a more comprehensive report and providing some guidance or direction as to what you would like to see visited in that, is it targeted just for that area, or is it a little broader? Because it's probably going to have implications for the neighborhood in a little bigger way. That's, I think, what staff are trying to guard against, or caution.
If I may.
Sorry.
If I may, I think staff trying to guard us against things is part of the challenge here. I think I would prefer a more comprehensive staff report with the conversation that we've been having here, just so we can really chew on it. I don't feel like I'm getting a solution here, yay or nay.
Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I feel, I think, similar to other councillors in what they've expressed so far. I am not in favor of site-specific exemptions. I think that just gets us into a situation where we'll create a dog's breakfast throughout the city. So I would not be supportive of that. But I would be prepared to, as Mr. Rudolph suggested, make a motion to refer this back to staff for a further more detailed report on options regarding parking.
Seconded by Councillor Brown. Do you wish to speak further to it, Councillor Thorpe?
No, I think
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Bylaw amendment and a cost associated with implementation, because many cities have that you can park upwards of 30 days if as a resident in Toronto, Vancouver, certain areas. I understand that people are against that, but we're the ones that created part of this problem. I look at when we talked about the new development on Uplands, and staff said, no, well, they can park on the street. So now we're having them park on the streets, and then we're telling them, now we want you to move, and some people just can't do it. So I would like to have included in that report a bylaw amendment and a cost associated with implementation for residents be exempt. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to comment on this before it goes. I suspect it's going to pass. If my recollection is correct, this very building was created in the way that it was with limited parking because it was designed to be subsidized housing for seniors who had little or no incomes, who were not expected to have vehicles, and it was granted and built and allowed to be built by this city on that basis. I appreciate that the complexion of the tenants and occupants may have changed, but Councillor Thorpe's point is well made about a bit of a dog's breakfast around this city if we're going to start changing things to make exemptions for specific areas like this. I think that staff have pointed out the complexity. I will support the motion to refer it back to staff, but I want to make it clear, I think that this is a situation where we are going to create more problems for a small number of people who have concerns, but it's already been pointed out, it's by complaint only. It isn't as if staff are patrolling the area now, and in order to enforce this properly in the future, it is going to require more staff time. In any event, I'm not seeing any other speakers. All those in favor of the motion? I'm going to oppose. And Councillor Brown? Any? No, that motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the Nanaimo Operations Center update and Phase 1 opportunity. Mr. Rosen again, please.
Excuse me a moment, I just had to grab the clicker. Thank you, Your Worship. So as Council is aware, staff have been working on the development of what we have been calling the Nanaimo Operations Center, or the NOC for short. Presently, operations amongst Parks, Public Works, and Engineering are spread out over the three facilities listed there. The Labio site, the Prudhoe Parks Yard, and the Parks Annex on Nanaimo Lakes Road. So the question is, why? Why are we considering this project? I'm not going to get into the details in this presentation. I went over that previously when I spoke to Council last September. But generally, the site falls far short of being able to meet the service needs of a growing community. The public doesn't directly use these operational sites. However, the services that the city provides the residents relies heavily on their effectiveness. This is the existing Nanaimo Public Works site, just for reference. This is the Parks Prudhoe Yard, which is their main operations yard. And then this is the Parks Annex up on Nanaimo Lakes Road. As part of what we presented to Council in September of last year, we showed the long-term vision or the master plan of the NOC site, which is presently at Public Works. And this shows what that essentially that site plan would look like. We also showed some renderings of what the buildings would look like. This is the main administration building, the sort of the front face of the operations yard. This is the fleet maintenance facility, and then this is the sort of the purpose-built storage building. As you can tell, and I mentioned this previously in September, the buildings are all sort of envisioned to be very utilitarian. There's not a lot of sort of architectural features to them, but they are meant to be sort of durable and rugged during a seismic event. The cost of building out the master plan is considerable. You may recall in 2021, it was forecast to require a budget of about $125 million for the entire vision. With recent inflationary pressures, that probably higher now, but also with the uncertainty in supply chains and volatility in pricing, it would be quite risky to set a budget for any large project. In particular, budgets for borrowing where assent or agreement of the electorate is needed to move that forward. So considering the broad financial picture, it may not be prudent to undertake a project of this magnitude right at this time and commit such a large portion of the city's borrowing capacity to one project. However, we still have these pressing capacity, condition, operational, and risk issues with the existing site. So in an effort to balance these operational needs with the organization with sort of the fiscal and the asset reality, an alternative phase one has been developed over the past number of months. Now, this alternative phase one, it would be a smaller project and a smaller financial commitment because it can be a standalone project. It still fits in with the overall master plan, and it would address some of the most urgent issues associated with the site. It would allow the city to limit the financial commitment and balance other priorities in the future as needed. So the alternative phase one, it's shown here, and it generally consists of the new fleet maintenance facility and some ancillary components like the vehicle wash, the frontage works and services, some drainage piping. There's really no change to the buildings that were presented to council in September of last year. Really the change is just to a few things like the electrical service for the fleet maintenance building would have to be a permanent electrical service rather than temporarily set up and then piggybacked off the main administration building. So there's been some changes to that and to things like the orientation of the vehicle wash and so on. It's really just to allow it to be a standalone project. So I could just walk quickly through the next phases. So this would be like a future phase that would include the storage building, and then the next phase after that would be the administration building, and then sort of the completion of the whole Nanaimo Operations Center as it's envisioned. This potential schedule shows in red the alternative phase one. You can see it's shown to occur over about 3.5 years, 3 to 4 year duration project. It's pretty substantial. We've also shown a timeline for the next phase, the next phase, and the next phase. It doesn't necessarily have to be right on the heels of phase one. Because I said this standalone project, we can actually separate phase one from the other phases. So we could actually push off the green, the orange, and the blue phases into future years as we decide there's urgency and funding and priority and so on. So it's a future decision that we can make. So there's some pros and cons with breaking out this alternative phase one. So one of the advantages is it's a smaller, manageable project that addresses some of the most urgent needs, in particular with fleet maintenance. It reduces the financial commitment, allowing the city to retain some flexibility for other priorities. There are some disadvantages. It doesn't resolve many of the long-standing issues we have with the overall sites. And there's a little bit of a higher overall capital and operational cost due to the fragmented phases of the requirement for it to be standalone. Just to give you an example, it's more costly to put in a permanent electrical service than to have it temporarily service and then piggyback off the administration bill. So there's a few things like that make it a little bit more costly overall. But in balance, we think retaining the financial flexibility and minimizing the commitment is better than making the large commitment now. So if we were to recommend a budget right now for the alternative phase one, we would probably recommend it at about $40 million and spread that out over about 3 years. So this is obviously a lot of money, although it's less than the overall project. Unfortunately, there's no viable grants for this type of thing, and borrowing will likely be a necessity to move this forward. So given the essential nature of operations and the utilitarian focus of the project, an alternative approval process, or an AAP as they're known, it could be ultimately be the preferred way to seek funding approval for this project. Although the project is close to the level of maturity where seeking budgetary approval would make sense, at this time, given the broader financial issues that we're seeing globally and in our community, we're recommending conducting a bit more due diligence before moving towards a borrowing process. So at this time, it would help refine the budgetary needs by determining the most effective way to deal with the stormwater, the feasibility of a multi-use trail, potentially in lieu of frontage works, and wrapping up some of the environmental documentation. To do that, we recommend a budget of about $120,000, and funding for that can be found within the General Capital Reserve, and a recommended motion has been set up for council should you wish to proceed with that. So I'll turn it over to you for questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. I can't resist saying this, knick-knack, paddywhack, give the knock a bone. I thought it was funny. I don't see any questions. I'm surprised. Councillor Bonner and then Councillor Gesselbrock. I woke him up.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just ask a question. I'm not going to start making jokes. It's unfortunate. When I was at FCM, we had a tour of Brandt Industries, and they decided to build a 2-acre building and stick in 4 10,000-watt lasers, which cost a god-awful amount of money. But they had a plan because they knew it would save the money in the long term. So I guess my question is, if we do this, are we going to be able to save money? I'm not suggesting we're going to be able to save $40 million, but somewhere in this thing is it going to be easier, better managed? We're saving time and moving people around, or if everything's there, is there some of that aspect of this project that we can say this will save time and money?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, with the ultimate Nanaimo Operations Center vision, where we have parks operations consolidated with public works and engineering, there's a big synergy and an efficiency gain that we can realize once the whole thing is complete. This interim or this alternative phase 1 is really just a start of that. And really what it is it's a new fleet maintenance facility. So the fleet maintenance crews will have some enhanced efficiency and be able to complete their work. For example, right now they're doing repairs on the garbage trucks out in the weather and the snow and the heat and so on, because there isn't room actually in the facility. So they'll be able to be more effective right now, but it'll be contained within the fleet maintenance group. Ultimately, though, we will see enhanced efficiencies once we're able to complete the vision.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Gesselbrock, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a question to staff. In terms of like alternate, like with the building standards, it seems like incredibly expensive to build anything these days, and just with the facility like this, is there options where, you know, maybe like, do the added standards of like being post-disaster standard add significant extra cost to the building's cost? And if they do, is there a possibility of maybe, you know, not doing all the buildings to that standard and lowering the standard a little bit to try to accomplish a bit more with the resources we have?
Through your worship, Councillor Gesselbrock, you're absolutely correct. The post-disaster seismic rating for a building does add some cost. Because of the utilitarian nature, it's not, we don't consider it excessive, but what we have done is for each building, we've looked at what the use is and whether it warrants an actual post-disaster rating. So the fleet maintenance facility, we believe, does. The administration building, we believe, does. There's a purpose-built storage building that has a lower, it's proposed to have a lower rating. So really, so it just doesn't fall down during an earthquake. Not that it has to be, you know, fully functional right after an earthquake. Just, it's quite a bit lower standard that we've proposed for that particular building. So we have kind of fine-tuned the design standards for each building depending on the use.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, there is a recommended motion. Moved Councillor Bonner, moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. Councillor Brown.
I'm going to be voting in opposition. I think this is way too expensive in general. It needs to be revisited and rethought from the ground up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All those in favor and contrary, Councillor Brown. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the road closure portion of Lake Road, 4295 Victoria Avenue, Loudon Park. Mr. Corson, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. If you could just bring up attachment A, please. Just helps explain what we're doing here a bit better. So this road closure application that's before council is to support the Loudon Boathouse project. Loudon Park in the red there, while used as a park and enjoyed as a park very much, was built on road. So what we're asking council to do is to close the road, shown in red there. That would then become officially park. No change of use for anyone, but legally it would change from road to park. And that's necessary so that when we apply for the development permit and the building permit for the boathouse, it actually has a physical title to be attached to. And so again, as a road closure bylaw process, there's 2 readings tonight. There'll be a 3rd reading at a subsequent meeting and then adoption at a following meeting. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Corson. I have to ask the obvious. How did that land ever show up as dedicated road? Is there thought to be some historical anomaly quirk that explains that?
Yes, Your Worship, there's 4 big boxes full of information on it. They used to be called Lake Road. And so Lake Road followed the foreshore. And over the years, we've been in the process of closing Lake Road and actually converting it to park. And that was, I think, a bit of a fill in there as well. So it just came into that particular shape over the years. This was all back to the former mining town site of Wellington. So yeah, long history on in this area of town.
So was Loudon Walkway part of the Lake Road then?
Correct. Yeah, Loudon Walkway was on a legal plan was called Lake Road. Yeah.
Thank you. I knew there'd be something interesting. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will move that council authorize the road closure of a portion of Lake Road at 4295 Victoria Avenue.
Seconded, Councillor Turley. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. I'll move that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2022 number 7341 to provide for highway closure and dedication removal of a portion of Lake Road at 4295 Victoria Avenue pass 1st reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. I will move that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2022 number 7341 pass 2nd reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And Your Worship, I will move that council direct staff to proceed with public notice for the closure of a portion of Lake Road.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? And I'm sure this will draw at least a few questions to City Hall, as it will come as a big surprise that the park is a road. Thank you very much. The next is Community Emergency Preparedness Fund application. Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is basically a request to direct staff to submit a grant application. The grant would support implementation of Council's 2020 climate change resilience strategy. And what's proposed is an application for up to $30,000 of funding for 100% of the project costs, so no matching funding required. And this is under the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund stream, grant application stream. And the project that's proposed to be supported by this would demonstrate risk reduction with regard to the impacts of climate change, and in this case, looking at mapping populations that might be in the community that might be or identifying mapping populations that would be disproportionately impacted by extreme heat events. And this is timely as the grant application deadline is June 24th, as well as timely coming on the heels of the BC Coroner's Service report on the heat-related deaths from last year's extreme heat event. So this is just a request to direct staff to make that application. The information in the report is well presented, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Mr. Holm. If the grant is not successful, will the funding come from within, or will the project not go ahead?
Through your worship, the project would not go ahead at this time.
Thank you.
Anyone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Turley, seconded Councillor Martman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We've done K. The next is L, Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 434-6135 McGirr Road. Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an application from Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools, and it's for a freestanding LED sign for Dover Bay School, and the proposed sign would be located on McGirr Road. Similar signs have been erected at Barsby and Wellington schools, pretty much the same sign, in fact. What's proposed here is a variance to the sign bylaw. The city's sign bylaw does not allow LED signs, LED animated signs outright. Council previously established guidelines for the establishment of LED and animated signs. This proposal meets the guidelines. Sorry, thank you for pulling the property map up on the screen. You can see it identified there overhead. If you could bring up the site plan, that'll show the location. That's attachment D. It'll show the location of the proposed sign, which is near the school entrance. You can see it in red there. There it is. Thank you. Near the school entrance on McGirr. And the proposed sign is, as I said, freestanding, located at the school entrance, and 4.52 meters in height as proposed. And similar to signs previously approved and erected at John Barsby and Wellington School. And as well as part of this proposal, the existing sign that's located on Hammond Bay, it's a static sign, would be removed. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Through you, in case anybody is still watching at this time of night, because we did get some feedback regarding concerns, but reading the report, my understanding is we're actually voting on the LED portion of the sign, because whether we approve the LED or not, a sign could be constructed there by the school district at the same size, etc. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's a variance to the sign bylaw to allow the LED portion. As well, I understand the complaint. We did receive a complaint from property that's closer to Uplands, Ocean Walk area, and the sign's proposed to be sited at McGirr, so quite well separated. Actually, the school lies between Uplands and the Ocean Walk residents and the proposed sign, which is on McGirr. So, yeah, it's a sign that's appropriate to the scale of the school and similar to those erected at Wellington and Barsby. Thanks.
And just if I may, I find the LED signs, I mean, that's how they communicate to parents, right? It's when you know report card day, when summer starts, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a good communication tool. I note that in the report it does say it's turned off between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and that it is oriented away from the residential dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turley.
Through you to Mr. Holm. So my recollection of the sign at Wellington is it's nowhere near the height of this one. No, maybe I'm wrong, which wouldn't surprise me. But this one appears to be, and I'm assuming the concrete footing is below ground. So it's like in feet, you're looking at 14 feet from ground to top, which I'm sure is a lot taller than the one at Wellington. So I'm not sure that, the one at Barsby, I have no idea, but.
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Turley. My understanding from looking at from speaking with Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools staff and from reviewing the file, I didn't go out and measure the sign at Wellington to confirm, but my understanding is that it's very similar in size. But yeah, you're correct. This would be around about 15 feet ish. So.
I'll take my tape measure next time I go by there.
Thanks.
Someone care to make the recommended? Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Hemmens. Councillor Brown?
Yes, thank you, Worship. I really hope I've made an attempt on like every LED sign. I hope this one will be the one council turns down. When is enough enough? It's unnecessary lighting. We have a whole OCP with a dark skies policy, and this is completely unnecessary. It's not, no, they're not turned off.
They don't turn them
If you drive by any of them, they look
They're not turned
ridiculous. It is so bright. We're going down a pointless path for people got by without LED signs forever. Parents knew what was happening. They knew when report card day was. If you want to know, you know. You don't need an LED sign flashing all day, all the time. This whole thing is ridiculous. It's completely contrary to dark skies policies, so I hope council will vote against it. Thank you.
No sign, no bright, no sign will I see tonight. Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Brown. I'll be voting opposed to this as well. I mean, I drive by the one on Barsby the other day, and it's still about stuff from June 6th. You know, they don't update them regularly. I've seen that on other ones. They don't get updated regularly, and I agree. We don't need more light pollution, and we certainly don't need big signs telling people that school's out for the summer. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe?
Thanks, Your Worship. Well, if a school doesn't update its information, that's up to the school. That's not our problem. I'm going to support this for two main reasons. Number one, this request does meet the criteria that council has established for allowing LED signs. And secondly, to be consistent, we have allowed them at other schools. And if Barsby has one and Wellington has one, then surely in the interest of fairness, we should abide by our own policy and say, yes, Dover, you can have one too. And it also makes a lot of sense to me to relocate their sign to the front of the school where parents arriving and dropping off kids and picking up kids will be able to see it, as opposed to where it currently is on the back of the school on Hammond Bay. So I'll support this.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Bonner, please.
Thank you, Worship. Based on that argument, I think I'm not going to support it because it's an LED light. If it's a question of dropping kids off in school so they can see the sign, why do we need it on at 10 o'clock at night? I think with all the ways of being able to communicate with people nowadays, heck, they could even do TikTok videos and they'd get most of the parents. I would think that I just don't see a need for this sign. Thanks very much. As an LED sign. They want to put up a sign, fine, just not an LED one.
Thank you very much. I am not going to second guess the school district that is going to pay for, construct, operate this sign. If the school board of this community and the people who support them and the parents and I assume the staff and principal at this school think the sign is appropriate, I just don't think it's my obligation to concern myself with whether or not it's appropriate. I think that it's a public demand, obviously. It's coming through a public body that's elected, so I'm going to support the motion. All those in favor and those opposed? In favor, I'm just going to do the count here. Councillors Martman, Hemmens, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Turley, and opposed, Councillors Armstrong, Gesselbrock, Brown, and Bonner. The motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item will be bylaws, number 13, public notice bylaw 2022, number 7325. Councillor Thorpe.
There we go. Thank you, Your Worship. I will move that Public Notice Bylaw 2022, number 7325, to provide for alternative means of publication be adopted.
We have a seconder, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The appropriate place to bring up item 10D2. Pardon me, Ms. Gurry, not 10B. Well, 10D2, yes, would be under not notices of the motion, and we have none, would be under other business, correct?
That's correct, Your Worship. So under...
And if I may, Ms. Gurry, before we start into this, may I ask a question and confirm? If council consents to that being heard tonight, there's no need for me to make a ruling on whether we should hear it. Is that correct?
I thought, Your Worship, you were going to have it be brought back for reconsideration under other business, and there is no need for it to be moved. Once you have decided you wanted this motion reconsidered, the motion is back on the floor for council to discuss and vote again on the matter.
So there's no question about my authority to do that?
No, it's in the procedure bylaw as well as the community charter.
All
if
right,
you can
thank
believe
very
me
much.
anymore.
Then I ask that be brought back for reconsideration.
Your Worship, may I speak?
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Gurry. I'm very interested in process here, and I'm always willing as a courtesy to allow reconsideration when a member has missed a meeting, but correct me if I'm wrong, this would not be a reconsideration. Reconsideration applies to council decisions. This is a decision that was made at a committee level. So I'm very, very curious about what proper process should apply here, because I don't see this as reconsideration.
So through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Thorpe, you're not incorrect in that either, Councillor Thorpe. However, the mayor, and that's why instead of Councillor Armstrong being the one to bring it back, I suggested the mayor, because not only in our procedure bylaw that doesn't specify, it's just council decisions that can be brought back for reconsideration. However, the community charter says that any motion can be brought back for reconsideration by the mayor, which is why I suggested the mayor be the one to bring it back. So you're not incorrect. A member of council could normally ask for reconsideration, but normally at the same meeting type. So if Councillor Armstrong was absent and or the prevailing side to a matter, a member of the prevailing side of the motion wanted to bring the matter back, they normally would at the next available meeting that they were either not absent to and or that they want the next one after the one that the meeting and recommendation passed or failed.
Councillor Armstrong?
Are we talking on the motion now or still on process?
I think we're still on process, because I'm going to ask my question again, if I may.
So I guess my question would be then, because this would be the first time that I heard it, we have to pass it at council because otherwise it doesn't count. So if I voted affirmative, then I would have the opportunity at the next council meeting to ask for reconsideration since I voted affirmative. Is that correct?
Your Worship, I'm sorry, Councillor Armstrong, I'm not totally understanding that.
Well, my question is, because this really is not, this hasn't gone to council yet for final approval, correct? This is what we're doing right now because it was in the consent. I asked for it to be pulled. So if I was to vote in favor of this motion at the council table, then I would have the opportunity to bring it back at reconsideration at the next meeting if it passed. Because I've never had the opportunity to vote on this. So if I voted on the consent package in the affirmative, it would give me the opportunity then to bring it back for reconsideration the next meeting.
So, Your Worship, through Councillor Armstrong, that's very convoluted. I think I understand what you're meaning. However, this process right now, with the mayor bringing it back for reconsideration and you all voting on it again, once a matter has been brought back for reconsideration, it cannot be brought back for reconsideration again. So you would not be able to bring this back again tonight regardless of what happened. However, had it been on the consent items, which it was, so technically it was, however, the point of order that Councillor Brown raised earlier was whether it should have been on under consent items or not. So that is not your issue. You thought it was, and you asked for it to be pulled. But Councillor Brown's point of order earlier in the evening was, should a committee recommendation that failed be put under consent items? And so that is why we're here where we're at right now.
Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock, then Councillor Brown, then I have another question. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think Councillor Thorpe and I are thinking the same thing here. Is nothing is being reconsidered because nothing got forwarded to council. The mayor, I think, is fully within the powers to exercise his rights to put forward a piece of new business. But I think that would not forfeit your reconsideration powers on that motion later, because no motion has been passed by council. So I think primacy of the primacy of the table, of the council table, is preserved. But I think we don't ever want to see failed motions in consent agenda. I don't think it should have been there, because so much gets defeated at committee, not so much, but enough gets defeated at committee that I think it would really blow a hole in our process about how you deal with those. So, I would make the argument it should have never been on the agenda. But I think there's a path forward here. There's numerous paths forward, but the easiest one, because I think we all understand the reason for the considering the motion here at the council table due to your absence at Finance and Audit. There's a path here where the mayor could put it on the table and then we could vote. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and I'll come back to my question again, Ms. Gurry. Not a process I like to have to engage in unnecessarily, but if council had consented to this matter being heard tonight, it could have been heard if all of council had consented. Am I wrong in that?
Your Worship, if all members of council wanted to hear this matter again, yes, council has the power to bring forward any motion it wants at any time and decide to have it decided on. Motions that have already happened, or they should be brought back forward for reconsideration. And the one thing that I'll say to Councillor Brown's point is a reconsideration can be brought forward on a failed motion and or a passed motion. It doesn't need to be passed for you to bring back any motion you want for reconsideration. So just because a motion failed doesn't mean you wouldn't be able to bring it back forward. And yes, Your Worship, if all of council had made a motion, I don't think a consent, but if you had all made a motion to review this matter again, it could have proceeded as well.
Thank you, and that's my point, and I'm going to suggest that in future, where there is a situation where a contentious matter, and this was contentious in terms of being a split vote with a member of council absence, that I think the appropriate thing to do is for us as council, regardless of our feelings about the particular motion, to agree to it being brought forward again. I just think it's a matter of fairness for me. There are many reasons we're absent from meetings, illness, holiday, whatever, and on this particular one, because it was obviously contentious, I think it's even more important that if a member of council is absent, that's what we should be doing. Having said that, it doesn't matter. I am bringing it forward, and the motion is the same as it initially was, and that is to approve council direct staff to increase the budget for the Lenhart Bridge project by $188,000. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. Is there any need? Well, I'm happy to have people speak to it. Councillor Armstrong?
Just because I didn't get the opportunity and I did watch. My concern is that this isn't just about cyclists. This is about people that use mobility aids, people pushing their strollers, not motorcycles, they shouldn't be on there, mobility scooters, women pushing their babies and stuff. So for me, it's really important that we finish it and get it done properly. So that's why I did ask for it to be brought back. It's something I do feel strongly on, and it's something that we heard from our accessibility in diversity committee as well, that it was very important to them. So I will be voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Worship. I agree. A lot of conversation last time was regarding bikes and access and having to get off the bikes. This is going to be a footbridge, so bikes you're always supposed to get off your bike and walk across. So I don't think that's the issue here. To me, the issue here is mobility. I drove by there again today on the way to a council meeting. You can't get a double wide stroller through that thing, right? It's just too narrow. And you'd have to be pretty good at a wheelchair to get around all those things that stop people from getting on there. So I think in 1960 or whenever this bridge was made, those considerations, people on wheelchairs were not considered as part when they developed these bridges. And that was a mistake, and I think we have an opportunity to correct the mistake, and I'd like to see that go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Worship. I promised Councillor Bonner I would think deeply about this if it was reconsidered at council. And so I went and visited again, and I have a question through to staff is why don't we just simply remove the existing barriers?
Sorry, I couldn't even hear your question, Councillor Brown.
My question is why don't we just remove the existing barriers? It solves the width problem.
Through your worship to Councillor Brown. So the existing barriers, I presume you're talking about the splitter bollard in the middle that prevents. Yeah. So one of the problems with that bridge is it's not compliant for cycling and pedestrians to be mixed. So we have to have some sort of indicator there for people to sort of dismount and walk their bike across to make it sort of like not necessarily legal but kind of safe. And also we want to avoid having any sort of fast moving, like if kids are riding a dirt bike or something, like other things like that. So generally we do put obstacles like that in front of a bridge like that just to make sure we don't get vehicles traversing it that we don't want or don't belong there. We certainly can review if there's an opportunity for us to adjust the bollards or the barriers to make it more accessible for wheelchairs and so on. We can take a look at that regardless of council's decision here. But off the top of my head, I can't say for sure whether we'd be able to do that or not.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. I took time after last vote, like Councillor Bonner did today, to actually look at the bridge. There are several factors that confirm why I supported this expenditure in the first place. I agree it's an increased expenditure. It wasn't anticipated. But staff have already put a great deal of time into this proposal. It is not accessible, it is not friendly, and even if you take down those barriers, it's a very narrow bridge. And frankly, it leads on to paths that are significantly wider throughout the park because we acknowledge that accessibility and the ability of people to pass by one another in relative safety, particularly even in COVID times, is important. And it is, from a practical perspective, it's not accessible to vehicles per se, but everybody on that side of the river has two choices to get into Bowen Park. They drive all the way down or walk all the way down to Wall Street, or they go back up around Bush and come into the park that way. That seems a ridiculous amount of travel to me to allow people, all who live on that side of the river, so to speak, the ability to go into that park. It just strikes me in all of the expenditures we make and authorize here that $188,000, recognizing accessibility, that it is the primary entrance to Bowen Park from that side of the river, it's important to support it. I'm looking for a word that's not encouraged, stimulated, or inspired anyone to say anything more. I can't find a proper word. I'm too tired. It's late. I see no other speakers. All those in favor? Councillors Armstrong, Martman, Gesselbrock, Krogh, and Bonner, and those opposed, Councillors Hemmens, Thorpe, Brown, and Turley. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Much appreciate the debate tonight. And Councillor Hemmens, you have...
Thank you, Worship. I am curious about the presentation from Deborah Hollins and Jason Harrison regarding the Community Advisory Board. And I was going to, under new business, ask to nominate someone, but I think previous conversation indicates the CAB has been somewhat our place there hasn't been clear, whether it's voting or non-voting. Sometimes we're there, sometimes we're not. Sometimes it's staff, sometimes it's council. So I would like to request a staff report on the presentation and any implications for council involvement. Thank you.
That's the motion. And it's seconded by Councillor Bonner. Councillor Armstrong, do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question. I did a lot of research on this, and there's nobody that I can find from a council that sits on these committees. And one of the questions I'd be asking from the report is, if you do sit on that committee, since it's not a committee of council, would you be allowed to vote on any motions coming forward from that committee, or would you be deemed in conflict since you were part of that committee?
Mr. Rudolph.
Thank you, Your Worship. Normally, council decides how it wants to appoint people to committees, not vice versa. So you could decide if there should be a council representative voting or non-voting, then you should decide if it's an elected representative or if it's a staff representative. Historically, there has been a staff representative, I think, attending these meetings in the past. I'm not sure if that's going on at this time, but we can flesh that out in a fairly brief report for a forthcoming meeting in July.
Yeah, that's what I saw. It was all staff members.
Okay, we'll investigate that.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? You're opposed, Councillor Turley? I will not accept that, Councillor Turley. The vote's unanimous. Thank you very much. I assume we have no question period items. And a motion for adjournment from Councillor Martman, no surprise, seconded by Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Thank you very much, council and staff. It's been a long day. Your work's appreciated.